Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Puremix Q&A session. Today, we are joined by the amazing Greg Wells. How's it going, Greg?
Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Cool. You are in sunny Los Angeles?
It's very rainy Los Angeles. One of the few times we get actual weather,
Yeah.
and it's supposed to rain for sort of 4 or 5 days in a row, which is actually really nice. I mean,
Mm.
we need it. And you
Yeah.
are in Columbus, and it is 6 feet of snow or palm trees and sunny.
Right now, it's actually pretty nice outside, but by the end of the Q&A, it could be 6 feet of snow. So, yeah. So. So we just wrapped up a huge start to finish series with you. That was really fun. It was pretty awesome. So for anybody who didn't catch that, we went to Sunset Sound with Bryce Drew, who was incredible, and watched Bryce and Drew create a song literally from a voice memo all the way to the final master, which was really, really neat to see on camera. Um, I don't think I had seen anything like that before, so that was really fun.
Yeah,
So,
I'm so happy that Fab had the idea to do it because
uh,
I've been doing this for a long time. I've never had it documented like that before. It was
yeah,
fascinating, kind of perversely fascinating for me to watch
yeah,
what I'm like in a certain situation or how I interface with an artist. And when you see yourself filmed, it's never the way you thought you were. So
right.
that was really educational for me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the way you guys captured it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that interview, Mark, that you did with me, no one knows that you did it because you edited yourself out of it, but you teed me up with the best questions.
Thanks.
The one that's free on YouTube, the one
Yeah,
that and you
yeah.
can see. That's the best interview I think I've ever been a part of, and you had so much to do with, you
Oh
know,
man.
you gave me such a thing to run with. The whole thing was a really quality experience. I guess there was just some audio issue with the last mastering episode or something. There was some
Right.
bizarre something, and hopefully that got fixed. I was sort of watching that go down peripherally. I didn't really understand how to fix it or what was wrong. It actually sounded fine to me when I listened to it.
Mm-hmm.
Even the earlier versions, the people said no, the kick drums something's wrong with it. It's distorting or something. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah. So, can kind of tell people about that real quick. I think this is a good opportunity to do that. So
okay,
we actually did have a audio capture issue on it, and we went back and did our best to fix it in post. We actually like had pulled it down and changed it and put it back up there. So when watching that, it is important to know if you want to hear the actual final master in the way that it's supposed to be intended. Go check out the song is now released. So you can search for Bryce Drew on Spotify, look for Lucky Number, and that'll give you a 1-to-1. We did get it pretty close that we feel like it's where it needs to be for you to get the education out of it, and
mm,
it's always kind of a tough decision when those things happen because on one hand we could pull it down and not have something that's not a perfect representation of what happened in there, but the content, the actual educational content was so good in between
mm,
like the back and forth with you and Brian and the actual learning experience of that. It didn't make sense for us to not have that out there. It would have been a waste of that just because of an audio issue. So we don't
right.
feel like the issue is so extreme that we shouldn't have it out there. But just important to note that you should go and check out the actual live master of Bryce Drew on your favorite streaming service. Spotify might not be the best representation either, but yeah, you can go and check out the actual released master too. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's always kind of tricky. The trick with Brian's setup is we're monitoring post his monitor controller, so we're picking it up there. Normally, when we do these things, we actually capture a 1-to-1 because we come out AES, so we're getting a digital 1-to-1 copy. But with Brian's setup,
Right.
it's a little bit different where we actually have to capture an analog signal. So we had a little bit of an issue that day, but yeah. So check it out
It
online. And
happens to the best of us.
yeah, yeah, and we actually think that there's a whole other lesson in that too, where we have these great minds in the room, and we're used to doing this all the time. But it's kind of an important lesson to find out that even when you have people who are doing their absolute best, like these issues do happen and gear freaks out, and it's important to just kind of keep rolling and make the best of it. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was, you know, producing a crazy session at Abbey Road in London with a 90-piece orchestra and a room filled with executives and you know, people in charge of a lot of stuff. And we had a ton of mic breeze because there were tons and tons and tons of mics. And this is the best studio, you know, in the world, arguably. And they know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly how to record an orchestra. And at one point, I heard a big, and we were thankfully not in the middle of a take, but we were in between takes and still working. And I turned to the engineer, what was that? And he was just like, you know, we're going to fix it. But what had happened was at least a third of the mic pre's just went down.
Oh man, wow.
And we couldn't afford to, you know, that's a very expensive recording day.
Absolutely,
we couldn't
yeah.
afford to stop.
Yeah.
So I don't actually know how they jimmied things to make that work, but the session continued, you know, with some very deft handling of like how to not draw a lot of attention to the fact that, I mean, that was actually an amazing lesson in professionalism in the control room, right? Because the control room is such a fragile environment. And I think a lot of people would have really freaked out. You know, even if you were like the third assistant engineer, I think someone might have lost their cool, and nobody did. I mean, I could tell something was up, and I heard a big sound, but you know, that's like the best gear in the world with the best people and the best studio and the best musicians, literally the best circumstances you could ever hope for. And at least a third of it just kind of went bye-bye. And the show must go on, as they used to say in vaudeville. Right. You know?
Yeah, and it's just unforeseen stuff that you can't always, you know, you can't always tell it's going to happen. Things break. Cool. So, yeah, well, let's chat a little bit about some of the other reasons that we're here. So we had a big mixing contest based around the Start to Finish series. So after we saw you guys create the song, we saw you mix the song on the console at Sunset, and then you guys mastered it at Brian Lucy's place. Everybody was able to actually download the multi-track from Sunset and then do their own mixes and submit that for a chance for some prizes, and just more importantly, the opportunity to kind of hear the tracks that you recorded, that you performed on, and get to make a version of that, which is pretty cool.
Such a cool thing. I would have freaked out if this existed 10, 20 years ago, you know, to be able to. I mean, I remember hearing that Peter Gabriel at some point had released some multi-track of one of his, but I didn't know where to get it or how to get my hands on it. You know, what an amazing thing. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, yeah, it's really definitely a lot of fun to be able to do that. The cool thing is to hear all the different versions of the song that come back. Nice. And in this particular contest, I think we had something like 332 mixes submitted.
Wow.
So it's pretty cool. So there's now 332 different versions of that song. You know,
that's amazing.
Kind of able to hear.
It's really amazing.
Yeah. So so with that, we call it a mixing contest because that allows us to do things like give out prizes, and it's kind of fun for people to do it that way. We always say this on the Q&As for the follow-ups of these things, that it is important for everybody to remember that the contest portion of it is not the reason to do these necessarily. We want to emphasize that it's about the exercise of it and just going through the motions of doing a mix. You get to watch somebody like Greg do this before you actually put your hands on the multi-track, and it's fun to take what Greg has done on the actual video, try those techniques out for yourself, and then you start to kind of incorporate all these different things. I mean, the fun part is if you kind of if you study through all these different contests with like Andrew Sheps and you and all of the other guys, you can kind of pull all these little techniques from everybody and then craft it into your own kind of unique workflow and all that stuff. So all of that to say that we're doing a contest so we can hand out some free goodies and all that. But the real important thing here is like just to remember that it's all about the exercise of going through the motion and improving your personal workflow and having fun with it. So without further ado, though, let's talk about winners.
You know what? Before we do that, I just want to jump on something that you said. You know, you're saying how that could really inform your own workflow, watching people like me or Andrew or whomever. And I just want to say that my workflow has been massively affected by watching the videos that you've made or that Mix with the Masters have made or all the stuff that's online, like just the incredible access to watch professionals doing their thing. I mean, it has really it's really changed the way that I work actually. And in fact, very recently, Mick Gazowski did a video for Puremix. Mm-hmm. I don't know how recently he did it, but very recently I found it and I saw it. And this movie that I'm mixing, they don't want me to deliver a stereo mix. They need 25 stereo stems. So there's no mix bus.
Wow.
Which is a big deal for me because I've been very toward the mix bus forever. There is no mix bus. And you know, there's lots of buses headed toward these 25 stems, but there's no final catch-all thing. And I had a little epiphany listening in my car, which I've had for a number of years, and I really know the sound of the car. And I thought these mixes actually sound really great, and they sound different than mixes I've done before. And I couldn't quite figure out what was going on. And then I remembered in the back of my head that Mick Gazowski also puts nothing on the mix bus, or almost nothing. Or if he does put it on the mix bus, he moves it to all his individual. And I know he has a system where he just hits record and his mix just prints perfectly to stems. Yeah. That's what I'm doing with the movie thing. That's exactly what I have to do. Anything that belongs on percussion 2 stem, including reverb or whatever that belongs with that, it only lives on the percussion 2 stem. Right. Same with vocals, same with drums, all of it. They live in their own world. And then I thought, I remember that Mick did a video with you guys and I should really watch it. So I have watched the whole thing 3 or 4 times in the last week or so. And I've completely changed the way I'm mixing now. I'm mixing other songs for other artists that are not movies. I'm mixing it that same way. I'm mixing it through individual buses. And then I was talking to Serban Gania about this as well. And he said, I got to tell you, that's basically what I do as well. He said, I don't have a bunch of individual buses for things, but he said, I tell you, I'm putting nothing on the mix bus. Like maybe just a tiny, tiny bit of limiting just to catch the overs, just to catch the real ouch peaks. But that's it. And both, you know, Serban and Mick have these just enormous sounding, very alive sounding mixes. And I was noticing that this movie thing that I'm working on, which again musically is very zingy, it's very alive, and it's pretty incredible music, but still sonically it was doing something different. So my point is, it's, you know, anyone, even if you're just starting, to me being a super old man who's been doing this for a long time, you know, I'm still constantly sucking up the great bits of information that you guys are so beautifully capturing. I'll shut up now.
No, yeah, that's great. Awesome to hear that. It's funny that you mentioned that about the stems with Serban. I was talking with John Paterno yesterday actually, and he was explaining to me. Well, one, he finally succumbed to a streaming service, so he just got Tidal because he couldn't stand them. But he was saying how he was kind of going through and listening to everybody's mixes to kind of just see what's going on right now. And he's like, I've been really, really digging Serban's thing. And he's like, I think I know what's going on. I think he's just doing everything in stems. I was like, how do you hear that in a final mix? That's incredible. But
you kind of can kind of hear that. I mean, I would listen to his mixes and realize that things had their own processing, but I never realized things don't have a final mix bus.
Yeah,
that doesn't even equate for me. I mean, Manny Marquand once said something to me about that. He said, don't put much on your mix bus. He said, do it all before the mix bus. And it just, for me, I just couldn't I couldn't even relate to that, you know.
Yeah.
It really, I mean, I've never done it until now, because I had to. They said, you know, the movie folks were like, Warner Brothers said, this is how you deliver your mixes, and this is
Yeah.
how we put it into Atmos.
Right.
And so, you know, I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And then I called my dear friend Alan Meyerson, who does this, you know, eats this stuff for breakfast. He's mixing movies constantly. He's one of the best ever at doing that. And he was real helpful, and, you know, kind of helped wrap my head around a different way of doing it, and kind of set me up to do it. And it didn't feel natural. It felt really foreign. I didn't like the results. I called him back. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And he gave me a couple more suggestions. It's just all, you know, this like learning thing. And then that led me to getting into a place where it actually felt right. And I started texting Serban saying, you know, I'm not saying I'm mixing like you, but these mixes I'm working on, they're reminding me of your mixes.
Mm.
Do you also do that? Do you also not put anything on the mix bus? And that's when he said, actually, I don't. You know, he said, I'm not doing all these different individual buses, but whatever he's doing, it has its own proprietary processing. And yeah, I'm repeating myself, but it's just it's fascinating to me. Never ending, you know, never ending.
Right. That's definitely the fun thing about audio, is it never stops, right? So just
never.
learning.
Even if it's a lesson of like what not to do, which is super informative and real helpful.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely fascinated about the process for you working on movies lately with The Greatest Showman and Cats and all kinds of stuff there. So I think we have some questions about that as well. So we'll have to come back to that, circle back to it.
Sure. So. It's been fascinating for me too, to apply years and years and years of record making chops, and then my own training as a musician, which was jazz and classical, and then sort of working on movies is really, I get to pull out all of those stops. And I find it really interesting. Anyway, I interrupted you like 15 minutes ago. You were gonna.
No, yeah. Let's go into the winners of the contest, and then we have a bunch of people in the live chat room with questions and some pre-submitted stuff. So we'll do all that. So we'll start.
Let me, Mark, continue, but I'm just gonna ask for a coffee. I'm not gonna leave, but I'm gonna text for a coffee.
Yeah, no problem. So while he's doing that, I want to give a shout out to the sponsors for the mixing contest. That was Acustica and Studio DMI. They provided all the prizes for us today. So huge shout out. Thank you, Ronnie, and all the guys over there. A lot of you guys know of Greg's El Rey plugin. So that was one of the prizes for us for the contest, and we're going to talk about that as well. So our first place winner is going to be the recipient of a full Acustica Studio DMI Diamond Series Suite and a Quantica Modula.
Lucky them.
Definitely a good prize. Second place is going to get the El Rey plus 2 additional plugins of their choice. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
And our third place winner is going to get the El Rey plugin. So, which
I've heard of that.
Yeah. I think your name is on the front of it.
Mm.
So tell us a little bit about that. How did that come to be?
Oh, it was a really very organic, nice little story. So Dave Pensato, who I have known for, I don't know, 15 years, maybe longer than that, maybe 17 years. I watched a video of Dave, I think Dave on the Pensato's place, you know, it was an episode of that where he does a segment where he talks about his favorite new specific type of plugin or something, or how to, you know, widening your bass sound or reverb on snares. Gets real specific, and he was talking about this particular one was his 5 favorite new plugins. And so for me, I'm such a geek, that's like a fish hook in the face. I'm like, what? You know, because Dave is a real, you know, lives way down the rabbit hole of this stuff, and has fantastic ears and fantastic taste and talent. And I wanted to know. One of the ones that he talked about was the Diamond EQ. which is Luca Predalesi Studio DMI in collaboration with Acustica Audio. And he said, you really have to check it out. And he was putting it on his mix bus. And he said, you just do just a tiny little bit, and showed us how he used it. And so, of course, I had to immediately demo it. And then I fell in love with it, and I bought it. And I called Dave and thanked him for doing that. And we were talking on the phone, and he, you know, he's great to get into a conversation with. And so became, you know, like we covered all kinds of topics. And at some point he just said, hey, if you ever want to meet those guys, you can tell them yourself how much you loved it, you know? And I said, sure, I'd be happy to let them know. So I wound up getting on the phone with Luca later in the week, like just a few days after that call. And there was no point to the call, as far as I was aware, other than for me to just say, holy moly, you really knocked it out of the park, as we say in American Canada baseball reference. And they did. And it's an amazing plugin. And he was super cool. And we talked for a while. And then at the very end of the conversation, he said, hey, Greg, if you ever have an idea for a plugin, and he was like in the middle of that sentence, and I was looking at my really old RCA BA6B compressor. The famous one's called a BA6A. I cannot tell the difference between these two things. They look exactly the same. They sound exactly the same to me. They have that same thing that they do. It's magic. Yeah. And I was looking at it and listening to him say this to me, and I just thought, you know, Acustica does such a great job of making the software really sound like hardware. And something just kind of went ding, 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 ding in me. And I don't have a plugin that sounds like the RCA compressor, and I never have. There's a couple of companies that have tried it, and they sound good. Nothing sounds like that thing, though. It's like, it sounds like it looks just like big, crazy big, you know, transformers, and looks like a nuclear power plant from 100 years ago, which weren't any 100 years ago, but I'm trying to be funny. So I mentioned that to him, and he said, let's try it. Like, zero hesitation. He said, let's try it. I'll introduce you to Giancarlo in Italy, who designs the plugins and does a lot of the, you know, the listening and the testing. And he said, it's going to mean we have to take that compressor to Italy for some time. And that scared me a little bit, but he actually, Luca drove from Las Vegas, where he lives and works, his mastering studio's there. He drove to my studio in LA and then personally drove it back. And, you know, he didn't fly to Italy, but some of the work for him did. And I think they carried it on, and it came back fine in one piece, and the rest is history. And then we, the very first version that they sent to me sounded great. It just, the low end is where plugins to me don't get it right a lot of the time, where the analog stuff, you plug it in and you just have that like full range, super low octave thing. And that's a big sound of a compressor like that kind of like a Neumann 47 mic. If you get up and you get the proximity effect and you're sort of that close to it, it adds this, as Joe Ciccarelli used to describe it to me, it adds like a lower octave to a vocal, and usually in a really nice way. And a compressor like that, you know, or like an old stay level, or any sort of old, one of those old tube, you know, is it a very mute compressor? I get lost when I start talking about the terminology, and I wind up saying the wrong thing. But it reminds me of the same sort of gloopy, gorgeous, just fat tone, still present, but it adds this girth to it that definitely wasn't there before. Even if you volume match, you know, you get exactly the same volume. I usually prefer the sound of things running through something like that. And I kind of just beat them up a little bit, very gently, in a very Canadian way, you know, like, I don't think we've quite got it yet. It's just that one area. And then they sent the visual for it, which was based on an iPhone photo that I took of my RCA compressor. And very quickly they turned on this gorgeous graphic user interface, GUI, GUI as the plugin people call it. And and it was almost perfect. Like, it looked so good. The lighting and the shading was just fantastic. And then I got sort of obsessed with the amount of scratches on the faceplate.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, there weren't enough. And then there were too many. And I'm like, guys, I'm sorry, this is really embarrassing. And then I started like screenshotting, zooming in on what scratches I was talking about. Like, take that one out. That one needs to be a little more.
Mm-hmm.
And they let me kind of run around with it. And then we got it to where I was just like, this is amazing. This is sounding better than any other plugin compressor. And I'm comparing it to everything, all my favorite stuff from everybody.
Yeah.
And it's a specific kind of compressor. It's not going to be right for everything. Not at all. I mean, it's really a stylistic choice to use something like that. Yeah. The things that it is right for, I think it's really, really right for. And we got it, and I use it on almost every mix. I've got the most incredible feedback from it, from everyone from Mike Dean to, Serban, who's never done presets for any plugin, has done some presets for this plugin. He liked it so much that he was willing to lend his name to it, and all kinds of folks like Spike Stent and except that Andrew Sheps guy.
Yeah.
He wouldn't do it. I'm like, Alan Meyerson's doing it, Serban Gainey's doing it, Spike Stent's doing it. I'm forgetting like half of the super famous names that I can drop, and Andrew's like, no, I'm not going to do it because I don't like you and I don't like you.
Yeah, he's a difficult guy.
It really is.
We have something coming that I think is going to show that pretty soon, that we shot at NAMM with you and Andrew, and I think it's really going to shine a light on Andrew. So.
On the deep wedge between us.
Yeah. Why?
Who is this?
Why wouldn't you do presets for my El-Ray plugin? What is the problem?
We'll talk later. You need to talk to the kids. And I'll come in later. I'll explain.
And he's gone. Andrew Sheps, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, brutal. Completely blew me off.
Yeah, we do presets for your plugin, but I guess he's watching.
What has not happened is my coffee has not shown up because this is really, it's going to be better if I have the coffee. I'm going to stand up just for 1 second. Sorry.
No worries. Yeah, I'll talk some more about these plugins. So that compressor we were talking about is the El-Ray. That's going to be what our first, second, and third prize winners are going to get, along with some other stuff for first and second place. But you guys can take a look at that here. And it's not, it's not necessarily meant to be a whole plug on the El-Ray compressor, but it really is a pretty remarkable thing. And I think that there's a free trial, so you guys can check it out and hear it. But without further ado, let's announce these winners and then get into some of these questions. So we'll start out with the third place winner. Okay. And that is going to be P. Brunkow. So you won third place, and you're going to get a copy of the El-Ray compressor from Greg, and Acustica and CDO DMI. And then our second place winner is, I think we got the name wrong on the graphic. I have Remix, but you said it was RN Mix, we think?
I'm pretty sure it's RZ Mix.
RZ Mix, cool. So congratulations. So RZ Mix, you won the El-Ray plus 2 additional plugins from Studio DMI and Acustica of your choice. And then after so many of these things saying that we need a drum roll sound effect, we still do not have one. But our first place winner, we have a drummer. Okay, so our first place prize will be the full Acustica Studio DMI Diamond Series Suite and the Quantica Modula. And that winner is, I'm going to say it is pronounced Rulltryne. So congratulations.
It's a tough one. I'm not sure how to say it.
Yeah. It's always awesome trying to say usernames on these things. It's really fun. Right. So you said that you have some, real quick, I should tell everybody kind of how we do these things. So we had 323 mixes submitted for this contest. And
craziness.
Greg has a couple things on his plate, so he's unable to go through all 323 himself, and we never kind of asked the mentors to do that because they're so gracious with their time already. So
I did actually peep a bunch of mixes, like I would get kind of 30 seconds in. Because I was just really curious, and they were all so different.
which is pretty fascinating and fun with this.
It is, yeah, and crazy for me, you know, who I had my hands all over it and was way too close to it. It's sort of interesting to hear how, you know, this stuff is so subjective. There is no right and wrong way. But anyway, I interrupted you again.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so what we typically do with these, Fab and his team go through the bulk of the mixes, and we narrow it down to what we feel are the top 10, and then send those on to the mentor, who then chooses our top 3 mixes. And another benefit to that is Greg then has the time to kind of make some notes and have some comments about it. So you had some notes for the first place mix, right?
I have notes on the top 3.
Awesome.
Why don't we go through it the way that you announced them?
Sure.
I can start with Brunkow.
Yeah.
Third place.
So
All of these 3 mixes, I really loved all of them, and would be quite happy to have any of these 3 mastered and live as the final mix, maybe with like a couple of little tweaks, but that was it.
Wow.
All 3 of these people really understood, I felt, what the intent of the vibe was, the energy that we were going for, and how to support Bryce's vocal, which is the most important thing. So the thing that I really loved about Brunkow's mix is I'm reading what I've written down here because I want to get it right, but I felt in a great way that this mix has a real sort of traditional singer-songwriter feel to it. There's a really gorgeous placement of the bass guitar and the kick drum and the choruses, the way that they react together, I really loved. And in the best possible way, it reminded me of a modern version of like a Roberta Flack recording, where it just, you know, get a great singer, kind of soulful vibe. It's a pretty chilled out track, and I could tell that the mixer really got that. So I love listening. I've listened to all of these several times, actually.
Yeah.
And then just moving on, I gotta get a little caffeine. Moving on to second place.
Mm-hmm. So that was RN mix, even though our graphic says remix.
Either remix or, oh, my kids are interrupting me.
Nice.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
We're gonna get a cameo?
Don't encourage. It's like letting a camel into the tent. They're still okay. Bye. It's either remix. The person's name is either remix or it's. I thought I saw RZ mix, like Res mix.
Yeah.
Hopefully, whoever you are, hopefully you know who we are talking about.
Yeah, we'll track you down.
My comments on this mix, my more specific comments were that on the guitars, the stereo imaging was really beautiful. Mm-hmm. I loved it. I also felt that every element in it had a very specific slotted out place, which is something that I wish I was better at. And I could tell that, you know, a lot of thought had been kind of put into that. And if not, then you're just naturally really good at that. It felt like a big, beautiful tapestry coming at me. Mm-hmm. And in terms of like, I love it when something knows what it is. And I wrote down, it knows what it is, this mix. Like it has a very confident identity, and that's important to me. You know, I'm always kind of looking for that from everything, from a tone of an instrument to a vocal performance to a mastering job to a mix to just anything that adds, you know, a stage of development to the thing I'm working on. It's got to feel like it believes itself.
Yeah.
And sort of leads with this kind of intuitive confidence. And I think if that element is not there, then you're building on not solid ground. And I think the listener can tell and can tell when it is there, when you get a nice, whatever, concrete, kryptonite foundation, that smells and tastes different, Yeah. So I definitely got that vibe from this mix. And then the first place, mix.
Mm-hmm.
We're saying Rulltryne, maybe
Rulltryne. Yeah.
Rulltryne. I don't know.
There we go.
I wrote down that I almost like this more than my own mix.
Wow.
I love how the guitar parts are really prominent, but they never get in the way of what's going on. And I think that's why I probably chose to turn them down more than they were in Rulltryne's mix.
Mm-hmm.
But I love how this person like made it all kind of speak. I felt like, because I did a lot of the way I'm sort of a spastic guitar player. I don't play guitar as well as I play piano and drums. And I think for that reason, what I do is I'll just give myself a bunch of tracks and just sort of just improvise and not think too much about anything. And the results of that are often a couple of things are really usable, and way more than a couple of things are completely unusable. Like, just what was I thinking? Why am I playing that part? But I was amazed at how many of those parts that he kept in this mix and just kind of made it work. And also in terms of the rhythm section end of it, I felt like the mixer really got the kind of funk in the trunk factor that I was looking for. I didn't want it to sound like a folk song. I wanted it to sound like a really funky folk song.
Right.
But funky before folk, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Bryce has this really fantastic musicality, the way she plays guitar. She's a very funky guitar player. She's got all this rhythm that just naturally pops out of her, and then she sings these fantastic. How about her vocals in that thing?
Right.
Like, every take she did basically sounded like a final vocal.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. And she's got a camera jammed up in her face, and a whole camera crew is around, and we're watching, and she knows that this is going to be watched online by who knows how many people. The scrutiny level is, it's bad enough to be in the studio and like have a microphone there, and you got two people watching you.
Yeah.
But this was, I don't know how many people were at that shoot if you added up everyone.
There were 3 in the live room, and then I think there were 4 of us in the control room. With all this going on, I mean, she had 2 cameras like constantly doing this around her, and
right. And then Fab kept throwing food at her, which I wish he had not done.
We were really confused why he kept doing that. It's a lot of cheese.
Very, very French thing to do. Anyway, I love that this mixer got that. He got that kind of like, like heavier. I wanted it to feel heavy without sounding heavy. And just energetically, like the energy of it, the intent of it, kind of just, for lack of a better word, the vibe of it, I felt was a really great fit for me as a producer of this song. I feel like the guy really, or the girl really just intuitively got what we were trying to get done. And it's always amazing to hear results like that. So I felt that more than any other mix that I heard. And that's why it was easy for me to put that mix in first place. Of course, it's impossible to rate. You can't really give away prizes for the best music because there's no such thing. Like, there's a world of people that love music that another world of people just can't stand. So there's no rule book, but I guess I hope no one is upset. I hope no one's offended. Like, I hate most of my own mixes. I can't listen to them at all. Maybe I hate all of them, actually. And it's just the way it is, but for all of those reasons, this Rulltryne mix really kind of jumped out as like, that feels like something that could have come from me and that person collaborating over the mix. And that person just got it to that point without my input. So well done to everybody. And it was really fascinating for me to go through the results and even just to talk about it now, it's fascinating.
Right. Well, I mean, that kind of feedback is just amazing. I mean, in general, for somebody to kind of nail a mix that close to a producer's vision is a tough thing. And to your role in so many cases is as producer, and you do interact with other mixing engineers that'll mix for you. So really, that's just a huge testament. So kudos to all you guys for making mixes that Greg would have professionally worked with. That's a huge thing. So very neat. Well,
it's hard to find. I mean, because I've been around for so long. Over the years, I've worked with all kinds of famous mix engineers, from older to younger, and that rarely happens, where the first thing you hear sounds almost done. It's because it's impossible, because the mixer is not. I mean, maybe it's a little different because of the Puremix thing, where you kind of were in the studio with us. But I was going to say that the mixer typically has not been privy to the chasing of the capture of the song and the production choices and just the vibe in the room and seeing how the artist reacts to things or how I might react to things. But even so, even with that input, you can still say, to any one of these people, from Servant to Tony Maserati to Spike to Michael Brower to Andrew to any of these amazing mixers, this is what I'm looking for. Please do this, please don't do this. And you never really know what you're going to hear till you hear it.
Right.
And then you have to kind of operate from that point.
Yeah, you have to hear something to react to and go, yeah.
Yeah, then you know what you've got, what you can keep, what you can improve, if you've got the wrong mixer, if you've got the right mixer, you wind up, it sort of reveals a lot of information that you just don't have access to until that point.
Right.
But I really think that these top three mixes, all of them were almost there, in a kind of an almost like shocking way. So keep mixing.
That's great.
Keep mixing. Keep chasing it.
Congratulations, everybody. If you guys want to hear the winning mixes, you can go to the Q&A, to the mixing contest page that's still up on Puremix, and those winners will be put up at the bottom, if not already, very shortly from now. So definitely check those out. All right, so we have a ton of questions. The live room is lighting up, so we should get to it. Okay, so let's start out with one from the live chat room. So hello, everybody that's watching live. Thank you for joining in. And let's see here. So one question that we should get to, somebody's asking which one of the which Mick Guzowski video you were referring to. Was that the Jamiroquai one that we put up a little bit ago?
I watched a little bit of that, but the one that I really hunkered down on was his mix template one.
Yeah.
Walking through the signal flow because I had this, for me, it was a pretty massive penny drop of this whole other way of approaching it. And I kept watching that video of Mix. It's not even half an hour long. It's about 25 minutes long. And Mick's very smart, and his mind moves really fast. And he just sort of presents a bunch of things. He's like, well, here's this, and this, and this is why I do that. So then here's that. I had to rewatch a bunch of stuff because, of course, to him it makes perfect sense because he's been doing it that way for quite a while.
Yeah,
I couldn't figure out what it was. I remember the first time I saw Andrew Shep's mix template, I couldn't really figure out what was going on. And then once you know it, then you know it, and it makes sense, and it's a fantastic idea. And I've incorporated a bunch of stuff from Andrew's mix template into my own. Same thing happened with Eric Valentine. I was hiring Eric to mix something, and I could not believe how he got the track to sound, in particular the drums. And I was asking him about it, and he very generously said, well, I'll just send you the session. And I remember opening it, and I had no idea what was going on. And and he uses all these crazy plugins I'd never even heard of. I thought I had most of the plugins made. Nope, I had to go like get a whole bunch of other plugins, and that took a while. And I kept opening it and just staring at it and going, what is going on? Didn't know. And then finally, my third time going back to it, oh, I see. Wow, that's complicated. Okay. And then you kind of learn it. It's like language, you know, where I'm not thinking about how to talk, but this used to be very confusing at one point.
Yeah. Amazing. It's so fun to kind of go through and put everybody's stuff together like that.
It is.
Okay.
It's really changed my whole thing.
Yeah. We had a number of questions about your vocal setup, both from Bryce on Lucky Number and then kind of what you do in general. I'll kind of merge a couple of those because I remember some of the pre-submitted with one that just came in on the live room. The live room question is, do you have any go-to settings on a 1073 when recording vocals? And I know that another one was asking about your parallel vocal bus on her, if you were also EQing that. So it doesn't, you know, in general, just as like with the video, it doesn't help us if we're like, you know, it's always 3 dB at 10K or something like that. But what's your general approach with that kind of stuff?
With specifically the 1073, I do what I remember Joe Ciccarelli doing with his 1073, which is a tiny little bit of tip top, you know, that high shelf that you can add on a 1073 that's not fixed. I can't remember what the frequency shape of that shelf is, but, and then the thing is every 1073, the EQ sounds really different on it. And the mic pre itself sounds really different. So Joe had this just, you know, God's 1073, which I believe we actually used on the Bryce recording because it lives in his rack, which also lives at Sunset Sound Studio One. Thank God for that. Thank Joe for that. Maybe it's the same thing, Joe, God. So I would watch him, you know, do that, and he would add a little bit of 100 hertz, just a little bit, to 3 dB, and a little bit of that shelf. And I don't think he added the top fixed frequency, which I think is like 7 point something. It's higher than 7. Maybe it is 7. I think it's like 7.2 or 7.8 or anyway. I do that sometimes just for a more specific kind of, I love that the Chris Lord-Alge 8K thing. I think 8K is a really magic frequency, and that's just totally, that's Chris telling me, you know, the first time I ever worked with him, I just remember looking at his SSL console and seeing 8K really, really aggressively just tweaked on so many tracks. Not just vocals, but like a lot of stuff. And we talked about it, and he was just saying like, that's just a great frequency to bring out excitement and presence. And it's high enough where it doesn't sound high mid-range at all. It still sounds kind of hi-fi, but it's low enough where you still get lots of bite and lots of excitement. And still I use 8K judiciously, and sometimes quite liberally to this day. And then the last thing on the 1073 is usually some sort of, you know, rolling out the real rumbly low end, which I'm just dying to call a low cut, but it is called a high pass, which I just still hurts my brain to remember what's a low pass and what's a high pass. I know it's letting the lows pass, but that just doesn't feel right to me. And usually I'll go to 50. If it's a really high female singer where there's really nothing going on below 80, then I'll go to 80. But some sort of something going on. Definitely the first notch. And that's kind of it. Jim Scott, who I'm a huge fan of, he really loves cranking the input on 1073s. He says that red knob is the sound of rock and roll. I remember when he said that to me, just you get this like extra beautiful drive. And I will experiment with that a bit, turning up the input and turning down the output. So you get kind of more saturation, more harmonic stuff is showing up. I do find that a 1073 just sort of brings that to the table anyway. You know, I have my two favorite mic pre's to use are my vintage 1073, which Joe Ciccarelli helped me find. We auditioned a bunch of them. the EQ in mine doesn't sound as good as Joe's, but the mic pre does, and I was happy with that, and I could, you know, go elsewhere for EQ. So I have that, and then I have Eric Valentine's Undertone Audio mic pre. They're very different. They're both just, I mean, it's I've never heard anything better, and I've heard a lot of stuff. The Eric's thing is more, it's quicker. It doesn't sound like, doesn't have that sort of beautifully smudgy vintage thing that my 1073 has. Why did I bring that up? I brought that up for a reason. It's gone. I'm sorry, I can't remember.
Yeah.
There was a reason I brought that up more than just to talk about it. Oh yes, the saturation from a 1073. I hear the difference. I hear it, like the Undertone can do some saturation transformery stuff, but it feels really different. And the Neve, even at a low level on the input, just kind of brings this like fantastic. It does this beautiful thing to the high end. It just sort of chills it out, keeps it present, but there's a lovely sort of hazy fuzziness to it that just sounds good. And in the same way that tape will do that to low and high frequencies, and you know, all the imperfections of tubes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
1073, yes.
Yeah.
Thumbs up to a 1073. Can't really go wrong with it. You can't really you have to work pretty hard to get a bad sound out of a 1073.
Yeah.
But they do all really sound quite different, just like the older microphones sound really different. You gotta find one that you like the sound of.
Yeah, which is a whole other thing, right? Because then it's you can't just trust that it's a 1073. It's got to be, you know, a certain tone. So that's a whole thing that gets overlooked. So let's see here. Let's do one of the pre-submitted here. And our first question comes from Jason Lang in Montreal, Quebec, fellow Canadian. And Jason asks, having now heard hundreds of different mixes of Lucky Number, are there any things that you wish you had done differently in your original mix? And how often do you listen to old work and feel that you could have done a better job?
Oh, I never don't have that reaction. Is that the right way of saying it? I always have that reaction that I could do a better job, old and new work. Every once in a while, I'll listen to something from a long time ago where it's been so long that I don't really remember it that well, or if at all. It happens in the car, you know, because my iTunes just starts automatically playing on Bluetooth in the car, and it will, there's stuff on there from, I mean, a really long time ago, you know, 20 years ago, some even way longer than that. And I'll hear something and think, that actually sounds pretty good. If it's a song that I've written, I usually think the song's not very good, but the sounds are good. You know, I could see what I was going for. It's so hard to react to your own work, you know. It's so hard to look at a picture of yourself if it was taken within the last year or two and go, oh, I like that picture. You know, it's like the worst thing is hearing yourself recorded. Like if I watch this back and I have to listen to my voice, my reactions, I want to kill that person, you know, like with a magic mouse, something that would take a long time. And so, you know, when I listen to my own work, it's sort of the reaction is coming from the same area code, I think. It's very hard to know how someone who isn't me is going to react to it. Of course, that's the thing I'm trying to do all the time, is to be as objective as possible and listen like just a music listener. I often say, I think that's one thing that Rick Rubin figured out very early on, where he realized the golden value of listening like a fan and not letting anything distract you or take you away from that place. I know that he's not fond of being in the studio, and is sort of notorious for not even coming to the studio. And I think I understand why. You know, he wants to hear it on his home stereo. He wants to react to it like it's like someone's put on a record for him and said, here, check this out. That's the way to listen. And I think that the people that have figured out how to listen to music that way or to react to their own storytelling that way have the potential to have massive careers, because it's all about that. We're not making mixes for us. We're making mixes that we want other people to hear and react to and embrace and make part of their lives. And so I think the more you can try to get in that headspace, and I not to speak for Rick, but I mean, you know, he like maybe could not find middle C on a piano, you know, and he's fine with that. Maybe he doesn't know how to plug in a guitar to a patch cable. Maybe he does, but I'm trying to make the point that he doesn't want to be encumbered with all that stuff, because it does pull focus, as they say in movie world. Oh, this pulls focus away from the thing that you're trying to, you know. So that's important. And I'm sort of answering a question that wasn't asked, as I will do. But yeah, I constantly listen to my mixes and go, oh, I suck. And, you know, I'm never going to mix like all the other people we've been mentioning earlier in this talk. And, and you know, the reality is I never will. And actually I find mixing pretty hard. I find it pretty hard. It takes me a long time to really get it to where I'm like, okay, I think this cake is baked. It takes a lot of like coming back to it another day. I know that Andrew Sheps and Serban, and probably a lot of people at this point, because either people have gone fully in the box or it's a hybrid setup. So it's quicker to recall mixes, you know, if not almost instantaneous. And a lot of these people will work on something for a short amount of time. The second they start to feel a little bit stagnant, a little bit like I'm not sure what to do, they close it. They open up another project they're working on, different artist, different band. Do that. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Spike Stentz told me the same thing. He was working on lots of mixes all the time, but he'd move it forward to a point, stop, open something up, move it forward to a point, stop, and just keep revisiting. And I think that helps with the objectivity hugely, you know, rather than spending like 48 hours on a big console with like one song and you're just chasing this thing.
Yeah, going crazy. Yeah. Amazing. Wow, so many other questions in my head from everything that you just said, but I'm going to keep moving, which is hard to do, but the questions are piling
well
up.
You got some good questions, so don't, you know, you have the good questions. I'm not saying everyone else's questions are good, but I mean, historically, when we've done this before, your questions are always like, wow, that's a great question. So don't
thank you.
Don't dim your light, Mark.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to hold back. They're gonna yell at me in the chat room though if I don't. So, or I'll get one from Guillaume, our master leader. Okay, so let's see here. We have some questions about ear care. That's an interesting one. So I'll read this one. So. We know that for an engineer, the most important thing is ears, but I was wondering how careful an engineer with let's say with your years of experience, do I need to see a specialist for cleaning? Let's change it a little bit. Are there specific things that you do to be careful of your hearing?
Yeah.
Every single day you're doing this in and out, and how do you maintain it?
It's fun to listen loud sometimes. Every once in a while, I'll catch myself listening a little louder than I probably should be. I do have a real fear of my ears not working at some point.
Yeah.
I'm really kind of aware of that. I'm aware of how finite the human body is. You know, I'm 51 years old now. I mean, I definitely feel it. Like waking up in the morning does not feel like it did 10 years ago. And I'm kind of screwed without my ears. So I'm trying to, you know, I see a friend of mine, Fabrice Gabriel, who is this brilliant coding designer that works with Stephen Slade, makes these incredible plugins. He's a really, 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 really smart guy. And he walks around the AES convention or the NAMM convention, and he's got full on foam earplugs in his ear canal, doesn't take them out because he takes it even more seriously. So now if, I try to carry some earplugs with me in my jacket pocket if we're going out to a restaurant. Sometimes I forget. It's hard to remember. On an airplane, I try to remember to bring earplugs, or if I'm lucky enough to be in business class, they usually supply some, and I put them in because that's a lot of noise over a long period of time. They're really consistent. It's louder than you think,
Right.
And all this stuff is so small and so fragile. Like, I've looked at photographs of the human vocal cords, like the voice box, and it's so tiny. It's so hilariously tiny and fragile looking and insignificant looking. Actually, it's impossible to think that Aretha Franklin was using that to sing, or Pavarotti, or anybody really, even me now. Like, it's amazing that this sound comes out of that tiny little mechanism. And I think eardrums are pretty similar. So I think being aware of monitor level is pretty crucial. Headphones are the devil. I read something once, I can't quantify it or prove it, but I remember reading something once a long time ago that headphones are louder than they sound to you when you're using them. There's something about having the speakers right there.
Yep.
It's louder decibel wise than it feels.
Just gonna reach for my volume knob real quick.
Yeah. Andrew Sheps has just sent me a little text, something with the ear. Your inner ears have the 3 smallest bones in your body. Oh, I mean, there you go.
Right. Wow.
It's tiny stuff. It's not like a big, arm muscle or like a big leg muscle. It's really tiny, crazy little things that we're basing our whole careers on. So, I'm careful with headphones. I try not to use headphones that often, actually. I went through a thing for a couple of years where, for some reason, my right ear got subjected to a lot of really loud sound, more than the left ear. It was usually kids. Like, just a lot of, like, I'd be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Someone would scream in this ear, and it kept happening and happening and happening, to the point where my wife said, you should just walk around with an earplug in that ear. And I now have a very quiet, I don't really notice it right now, but it's like this, it's like white noise. It's not a tone. It's not happening in my left ear, and it's really subtle in this ear. Sometimes when it's like deadly quiet, I can really notice it. And it just sort of sounds like just a really high frequency white noise. It's a bunch of frequencies. That was not there before. And that is a sign of hearing loss, which is really scary for me. So I'm trying to, I read an interview with George Martin where he described the day he realized that he wasn't hearing a lot of high frequencies and how crushing it was for him. He was in the room at Abbey Road, where they were testing some frequency sweep, something like that. And I probably got the details wrong, but basically everyone else in the room could hear a thing. And he was like, well, when are we going to hear the thing? And he could tell from the looks in their faces that they were hearing the thing. And he was a navigator in the war. I guess that would be World War II. He was a navigator, and it's loud. There's no soundproofing in those planes, and I probably had headphones on trying to communicate with everybody, which must have been even louder than the plane. And there's hearing damage. I think a lot of kids walking around with the earbuds cranked in 20 years are going to be saying, "What?
Right?
What? What'd you say? What?" I think so many people are going to have hearing damage from that stuff. So I think it's okay to be geeked out about that and go, actually, you know what? I gotta protect. There's a shelf life to this stuff.
Just final note on that. I mean, you're an incredible drummer, as we saw. Any things that you did specifically while you were, I mean, even just learning how to play drums when you're younger, you don't really think about this stuff, and you're just like, oh, the snare drum sounds great, you know? So
Yeah, I did nothing as a younger person to stop the loudness of that stuff. Um, at some point in the studio, when did I discover this? I discovered in my mid to later 20s that if I had headphones on that were kind of soundproof headphones, I actually made my own for a while. Um, I was on tour with Katy Lang in the early 90s, and we stopped at the LL Bean store outside of Boston, which is this huge like camping supply, hunting supplies, and nice sort of outdoorsy clothes. And they had these hunters headphones. You know, if you're shooting, they're just like they look like old World War II Navigator headphones, big clunky, and they're not headphones. They're just it's so that you don't go deaf from shooting a gun. I bought them, and with the help of my keyboard tech, Dave, on tour with me, we put a pair of Sony V6s inside these headphones. And I started drumming with them in the studio. And I realized that when I kind of took myself out of the equation of hearing the drums so loud in the room, which you do on most headphones, that I played better. I played a lot better. I could sort of disappear into the track more, and I could hear the track better. I could react more to what was happening. And then, having nothing to do with me, a few companies started making their own versions of those headphones. Vic Firth started doing it. I remember a couple people do it, and there's a really good one now made by, I believe it is the drummer of the Steve Miller Band. The guy that plays drums with Steve Miller today has this little side business. I think they're called Ultimate Headphones. And he really doesn't want it to become a big thing. You know, I've offered to help him sell. He's like, no, I don't. I just want to, I get little orders and I'll make them. And I just like, I want to keep it tiny. But I discovered them in Nashville. And they're great. They sound really good. They're really pretty soundproof. And it's great for being in front of a loud guitar amplifier, because I feel like guitars sound better when you're in front of the amp. The feedback is really different than if you just have the guitar loud coming through the studio speakers. It's a different kind of thing. And for drumming, it's a game changer for me. I play so much better. And now when I sit down at drums without some sort of earplugs in or those headphones on, I'm always shocked at how insanely loud they are. And it's distracting for me. It pulls my focus away from my own drumming. Right. Yeah, it's an old man thing, you know. It's like, oh, yeah, I made a mistake for a couple decades, and now I'm going to try and do it better. But But I do think drummers play better with that stuff in. I think you're going to play more accurately, and you just check it out, you know. See what it does for you.
Yeah, and that's a really good tip for everybody watching. I mean, we're all engineers, and sometimes you'll work with a drummer that just, you know, doesn't really know how to balance the top and bottom of the kit. Something like that can kind of help them, because it's cutting out the reaction of the room. And like you're saying, you know, they're hearing through the microphones, and they're, oh, maybe I shouldn't smash that crash so hard, you know. So.
Yeah, I mean, I quite often will use those headphones and take the drums completely out of the headphones. So I'm really low in the mix, and I'm reacting to the track, and I'm letting the track kind of play me. I'm not really thinking about, I am going to drum on this. I'm like letting this thing sort of bubble through me. And then I felt like that happened on the Bryce song. You can sort of see it happening. Like, I really didn't know what I was going to play on the bass or on the drums, or really on anything, even the first piano takes. I never really know what's going to happen. And if you just kind of open yourself up to the song, and then get out of the way of it and try to help it and support it. For me, especially on drums, having soundproof headphones is a big help.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Okay, so to keep going here, we had a question come in about the 21 Pilots record. So this is from Space Prodigy in the chat. She asks, when working with 21 Pilots, how did you get such a wide uke sound on the track House of Gold? Was it a stereo ribbon like the R88, or one mono mic recorded twice and then panned hard left and right? So how did you go about that sound?
I unfortunately can't recall right now because it's 2020 and we made that record in when? 2011, 2012, maybe. I
Yeah,
don't remember. I'm really sorry. I can't recall. I don't know.
yeah,
Um, if it wasn't doubled, which would explain the widening, then it was probably this fantastic microphone. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I know exactly what it looks like. It's made by AEA.
mm-hmm.
It's this massive weapon-like looking thing, this
Mm,
massive, huge black phallic microphone that would kill somebody.
yeah.
It's called the
Is it the
R88,
R88?
maybe
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
something
she
like that.
actually asked, was it a stereo ribbon like the R88 in
Yeah, it may very
the
well
email?
have been that. If you can tell that you're just listening to one ukulele, it's probably that mic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it may also be doubled. I can't remember.
Yeah,
Can't remember.
yeah. Cool. Um, all right, let's do a pre-submitted one here. Okay, so let's go. Yeah, let's do this one. So this is a question that's kind of for your producer mind. So this is from Matt in Vienna, Austria. And Matt asks, what are your tips for an emerging artist or band to get heard in today's music industry? And before you answer that, I want to add one other like piece onto that. So his question was, what are your tips for an artist to be heard in today's emerging music industry? And another person asked a question about how you have a specific deal set up with Bryce where you're producing her and you guys have an arrangement where you as a producer developing an artist. So kind of like piggyback off of that and kind of like meld these two questions together. Uh, so what are your tips for an artist that's trying to break in the music industry? And maybe you could answer that from the site of you as a producer. What is it that makes an artist jump out to you? So not just tips on the whole, but what are some personal things for you that help you latch on to somebody?
Well, I'm almost looking for someone who has a pretty unique take on things because we are just saddled with the same 12 notes, you know. Uh, Apparently there's like seven different versions of there's seven stories that everyone tells and rehashes in movies or books. And I saw a thing recently where the movie director Ron Howard he said that and he said actually I think there's just one story.
Hmm.
Um, so a long time ago, Beck said something. The artist Beck said it's all about how we put our own perversion on it. It's how we spin
Hmm.
it in our own weird, unique way, and then it sounds new. So I'm looking for that,
Hmm.
whatever that is. Um, I recently found out that every day, between 40 to 60,000, not 40 to 60, 40,000 to 60,000 songs are uploaded online
Crazy.
every day. Every day. So
Yeah.
that should be, if you're crazy enough to want to do this, that should be all the impetus, all the inspiration, all the reasons you would ever need to really try and do something exciting and take a chance and have fun with what you're doing,
Hmm.
and really go for it and just try something that feels interesting and true
Hmm.
and uh, and that you're injecting yourself into. And sometimes that stuff really falls on its face and doesn't work. And sometimes it's what you're hoping for. And sometimes it's the thing that you're actually quite embarrassed by and you wish no one would hear that winds up becoming your biggest, most defining success.
Hmm.
Um, but I think it really comes from a place of that just like, this is true for me and this is my unique experience and this is my personality kind of injected into it. And that's the stuff that gets me excited as a listener. Um, I hate it when things sound like other things. It drives me crazy. It's an instant turn off.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, we're saturated. I mean, hilariously saturated. And forget streaming. Forget
Hmm.
Mark, you and I could do a track right now today and upload it by the end of the day, and we'd be one of the tens of thousands that are doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But just even the major label record companies, they have so many, just one company, they have so many acts signed to them. They're all in various stages of making a new album. And, if you're Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters signed to RCA, you got, your band's doing great. You got a great career. But still, even if you're him and your record's done and you love your record and you've spent the last year and a half on it or whatever it is, and you're really proud of it, you don't know who else within the same company is releasing an album that same week.
Right.
And, it's more than one person. It's probably 10 people, maybe more, depending on how big the label, how big the roster is. And then, there's one head of promotion at the record label. There's one radio person who then probably leads the department, but there's one person that's in charge. And the way that those people get paid, most of them, if not all of them, from junior A&R people all the way up to the presidents of the label, they get paid like this. They, Mark, if I was hiring you to be the new whatever president of fill in the blank label, I would say, okay, your annual salary is going to be $500,000, $500,000. Like, that's a lot of money.
I accept.
Yeah, you would accept. And we would all accept. And then you're super excited. This is going to be the new you. And then you read the fine print and it says, well, actually, you get half of that on the day you start. That's great. Half, great. You can't get the other half unless you hit these certain numbers. And I guess that's different for everybody, whatever the terms are, but you have to hit a sales amount to trigger the other half. And they call the other half your bonus check. But, in my mind, a bonus check is maybe 10% of your salary or something like that. Maybe it's 15%, maybe it's 20%. Definitely not 50%, but it's 50%. So if those people are making decisions about what music to push, you're crazy if you don't think that they're also factoring in how are they going to get that other 50% of their salary. Like, maybe not everyone's deal is structured that way, but definitely most of them are. I've seen the contracts. I have friends of mine that have all those positions, from head of promotion to junior A&R to running the label. And they got hired under those terms. You get the other half if you make this much money for the company. So the reason I'm bringing all of that up is there's so many forces against us as creative people, just because that's the way the world is. But now in particular with computers and the internet, it's so easy to do a thing that was had a very narrow entry point for a long time. Now, like, anyone can do it. And there's never been more technology made to make it easier for people to do it. I'm guilty of making plugins that are very, 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 very easy to use that hopefully sound as good as the best stuff that we've got. And, what does that say? But I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't have a great idea, you can have the most difficult stuff to use or the easiest stuff to use, and it's still going to sound like crap if it's not a good idea. It has to be a great idea. So I would just use all of the scary stuff in the same way that I get kind of excited and inspired by the thought of my own death as like a defining thing to, like, there's no reason to not try a thing, to not, like, I have a pipe organ behind me. Most people in their rational mind would not bring a pipe organ into their home. I have one.
Right.
More importantly, I have a wife who's actually like, I'm okay with that. And she actually figured out where to put it, because I could figure out where to put them. Like, let's put it in the living room. She said, no. There's a bookshelf in the office. Let's take out the bookshelf space, big enough to fit the organ. We'll slide the organ into there, and there it is. I've completely lost my train of thought, but thank you. I find that stuff all super inspiring to just really like go for it and really, you've got nothing to lose. Jim Carrey has a beautiful speech about having nothing to lose, you know, where people accept security, and um, there's sort of no point in that because there is no, the only, my dad used to say to me, the only secure thing that we know we have in life is our own death, you know. So if you really want a bunch of security, just jump in your own coffin and start nailing, you know.
Right.
Just try stuff, try stuff. Be brave. Don't copy. In the beginning, when you're learning, copying is the right thing to do. But if you're really nuts enough to want to do this professionally and have your name on a thing or your band name on a thing, just make sure that you feel like it smells and tastes like something that's really exciting for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Personally exciting, I think, is a big part of that. Thank you. That's very inspirational to hear. I mean, especially you know so many different sides of the industry from all the different hats that you wear and everything. So it's definitely a very unique perspective, both for musicians and for producers who are out there trying to make records. I mean, trying to copy your mix was not going to be the best way to go about even doing the mixing contest. But bringing something new and unique to it might be that would like catch your ear. So.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So let's do another one. The Thumb asks, today many people are both producer and mix engineer at the same time, meaning they can go right back to the arrangement level to tweak things and make the mix easier. Do you have any tips on this? So maybe that was exactly what you did in this one. You had the power to change the arrangement and everything. Is that something you do often?
Yeah. Yeah, because if you don't have the right script, then no gear is gonna make that better.
Yeah.
It's down to the writing, I think. I make a lot of food and movie metaphors, and I think that you need a really killer script to make a really amazing movie. And if there's a problem with the script, you can have all the juice in the world and the best, hottest actors and biggest budget, your movie's still going to have a big flaw in it. So, yeah, I love to be able to kind of reverse engineer and go back to, I mean, in my studio, I'm building a new studio here. But for 18 years, I was at Rocket Carousel Studio, which was another place I built. And at some point, maybe 3 or 4 years into having that place, I realized if I got a little bit more gear, I could leave all of this stuff mic'd up all the time. And that became a thing that I chased, and it took me quite a while to get that together. But I did get it to the point where I had a bunch of outboard gear that was just for recording and a bunch of outboard gear that was only for mixing. And I built myself into the luxury of having everything mic'd, even like the Leslie cabinet, the piano, the bass rig, the guitar rig, all the drums, the vocal thing, and everything going through like great signal paths. And had really spent a lot of time. And Ian McGregor and I, my engineer of 10 years, and we still work together, but we were full time for a decade. We would sometimes just take like a half day and go through all those sounds again and just make sure that we love like where we're going to leave the drum sound set until we change it again. But just so that if I was writing something with somebody, I could say, I'm hearing a drum beat, and go to the drums and immediately start playing. I've lost my train of thought.
Well, I want to stop you there, and I want to go down that rabbit hole a little bit, because there's something so important about that, just moving at the speed of creativity. And that's something that you did also in the series. When you had the room set up, you had, just remembering from being on the shoot, you had your assistants bring all of those instruments, and everything was, I mean, for the sake of the video, we had to kind of break it up and explain what was going on. Like, okay, this is going to be this input path, and we made you actually explain the microphones and everything. But everything was set up in the live room in that same sense, where I'm guessing on a normal session, you would have just had it all ready to go at any moment. So if you had an idea, you could go put it down and then get back to it. And there's something so important about that workflow, just in not losing that moment of inspiration and translating it quickly, that saves ultimately time in your day too. I think there's something really important about that that's not talked about a lot. That might be interesting to hear
Hugely.
your feelings on. Yeah.
Yeah, I read a fun quote from Phineas, Billie Eilish's older brother, um, after they won the Grammys, and he was saying, I can't stand working in really beautiful recording studios because it takes them half an hour to figure out how to plug in the iPhone,
Yeah.
just to listen to whatever, however they're trying to like play a song off their phone. Like,
Hmm.
and I get that. It kind of blows my mind if I do a session somewhere else, nothing's set up. It's just
Yeah.
an empty room. And I understand why, because they don't know what's coming in and everything's different, but
Yeah.
that we have to like start from scratch with the
Right.
vocals to the drums to the anything.
Hmm.
It was a great luxury to have a workspace where everything was, I could just hit the ground running and eliminated all that sort of hurry up and wait factor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, going a little bit further down that, what are some things that you do in your day to day? Say that you're on a project. I mean, even if you're working in the box, do you have things that you do to kind of, make sure you're not starting with a blank canvas, or do you prefer to work that way? Like,
Um, I have sort of a basic template that I'll start with that I'm changing pretty often. Um, and it just lets me sort of just go to any number of places. Um, uh, if I was at Rocket Carousel Studio where I had drums set up and all this other stuff set up, that would be part in the template.
mm,
I'm currently working out of a temporary smaller studio while I build a new studio, and that's got, just there's less options. There's no live drums there, but there is live guitar, there's live vocals, there's everything else is me on a keyboard. And so that stuff's ready to go. It's kind of like sitting there waiting for me to just hit record on the track and try a thing. But I really don't, if I'm writing a song, I don't look at the computer. I don't use the computer. I just try to wait till either I hear some music in my head and I try to start chasing it on a guitar or on a piano sound, or someone's got a melody. I try to stay away from the technology because, again, that does that pull focus thing where I get kind of started to get weighed down a bit by, well, how do I make this work and what's the input need to be?
mhm.
None of that's going to help the idea form and develop and get the water poured on it that it needs. I'm such a huge fan of the idea. The idea is everything. Looking for great, fresh, great ideas, emotional and smart, unique ideas. Then when we've got that, then I can get more technical and get into the capture of it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Cool. Well, let's see. Let's do another one of the pre-submitted, and let's see. We'll take this guy. This is from Marco Martinez from Mexico, and his question is, what do you prefer, to record all of the instruments yourself as you did for Bryce's song, or to hire your favorite musicians and do it guided by you, where you're steering the ship as producer?
I love working with great musicians. It's so much fun. I think without question, when I was younger, I'm from a very small rural town in Canada where, as a little boy in the 1970s and the 1980s, to my knowledge, there was no recording studio in my town. And no one really did music professionally other than like playing at a local bar, So when I finally got the shot to be in a recording studio and get paid to do it, I was so excited on my first early jobs as a record producer, that I wasn't really approaching it the way that I do now, where I felt at that point that I still wanted to be on the basketball team.
Mm-hmm.
And I still am on the team when it's needed, but I really do view myself more as the coach who has played lots of basketball, and I'm getting hired to coach this project, to coach, to direct, to produce, to whatever you want to call it. a famous basketball coach is not on the floor trying to get a 3-point shot.
Right.
It's all about setting up the amazing younger players to do that and really shine and just give them the best input and the best direction possible. And that turns me on creatively now in a way that maybe it didn't turn me on when I was 27, but I'm 51 now. So I love imbuing people with the belief that they can create stuff like that, even if you're not doing music professionally. I love that. I love that. Probably because I didn't get enough of that when I was younger, so it's really fun to like sort of spread that wherever I can, I love watching other people do it as well. So also part of like why on a lot of my productions I am the band. Some of them came from songwriting sessions where there was no budget, and you couldn't hire other musicians. So because I was in my studio where I had everything mic'd up, and because I didn't do anything else for my entire life other than play all these different instruments, and got it to this level of proficiency because I was just disinterested in pretty much everything else, I could be the band. And when I was a session musician before I was producing records and songwriting, I would often get hired by other record producers to be the band. Some of them would think of me as like just a bass player and a drummer, or just a guitar player, or half the band, or a couple of them thought of me as all the band. So it's a thing that I did and still do, but I don't really care if it's me now. I don't care. I care about the results coming out of the speakers being the best they can be, the best. And if I feel like I'm the best choice for something, if I feel really comfortable with it, I feel like I know what to bring to it, I know what to do with it, then it would be dumb for me to not try. If I know right away, like I'm not what I'm looking for, what seems to come through me is probably not what the song's going to need, I'm the first one on the phone bringing in that, it's so much fun. Okay, wait a second.
Who's this?
What are we being? What's
going on? Are we being hacked?
Why is he pointing to a couch?
My cats wanted to say hi.
What is happening? This is like a Batman episode where the
Let's
villain takes over.
I don't know.
Your room should be slanted a little bit. Can you slant your camera?
Well, you can see Squid though, right?
Yeah.
And Mole's over here. That's all. The cats wanted to say hi.
We got cat crashed.
Yeah.
We got to figure out how Andrew's getting in on these streams.
How is that happening? How do we?
It's best if you don't know, actually.
Oh man,
I got nothing.
This is
Andrew Steps, everybody.
Foreshadowing.
Good luck.
I'm just saying, I got to run in a sec because I got to go eat dinner. But I wanted to say hello. I want to say that's a very fine coffee mug. Your Union Jack coffee mug.
Yes, you want to be Anglophile.
Yeah. Well, can I just say that I do have my visa now, so I do not have to leave the country. I'm here indefinitely.
You can get kicked out on a visa. I'm just saying.
No, I have the indefinite leave to remain. I mean, I think I'd have to murder someone, which could happen. But
if you get framed for a felony, they can kick you out.
But I'm going to get the citizenship thing, and then I'll just go to jail here. So
then you'll murder somebody.
Yeah.
Andrew, you just did one of my favorite things in a session, which is, you'll be like working on something, and the artist is behind you, and they get a phone call, and they're like, "Oh yeah, sorry, I can't talk right now. I'm in the studio." That happens to me all the time. So you were like, "I have to go eat dinner." So.
Andrew, what's going on? And by the way, how are you just appearing like in the middle of?
I'm telling you, don't ask. It's just a thing I can do. I just wanted to pop in and say hi, and that everything you've been saying is great. But I do feel like before you finish up, you have to talk about your snowshoes.
There's actually a question in the chat room about those. There's a
trying to figure out where that sentence was going to end and did not see that one coming.
There's a little bit of a gear slutty question in the chat room. It's from Sam Knack. And he says, "Greg, what brand and model number of snowshoes behind you are those? Are they a matching pair?"
I keep forgetting that they're in the shot because I've had me like really shrunken, so I'm not distracted by my ridiculous massive head. Those are my father's snowshoes from Canada. And of course now snowshoes are like, everything is modern and nano. So the snowshoes are very tiny and actually way more fun to use because that is like quite a commitment. But yeah, my dad passed away 14 years ago, 14 years ago. And at some point my mom said, do you want his snowshoes? And she's in Toronto, like, yeah. So there's nowhere to put them. And when I moved into this house 7 years ago, I put them there and they have not moved. So I don't know where Nina and I, my wife and I, talked about mounting them up somewhere, but they just look ridiculous. So I don't know where
it might snow. I mean, you keep them where you can get them.
Easy access. Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's not why they're there, but that's a great reason. And I'll bring that up next time I'm asked.
Awesome.
All right, that's all I had. I'm going to go eat dinner, but the cats say hi, though apparently you've bored them to the point where they've passed out. They're looking comatose right now.
I bored them.
Yeah, not me.
Okay.
You saw how alert they were when we got on this call.
It's interesting. I don't think you asked me to do presets for your Omni channel either. I just
we're about to actually. So
over time traveling. What?
No. You'll see. There's a thing. There's a thing with the Omni channel.
You're so mysterious. This whole like appearing and there's a thing. No one really knows how this happened, and you won't tell me.
Control of the internet.
Pretty amazing the control you have from rural England.
I do want to point out that you're wearing headphones though, and the cats can't actually hear Greg.
They made me put them on.
That's pretty good. That was pretty quick.
It was quick. Yeah. On the point.
Yeah, Andrew loves headphones. When that's a whole online YouTube discussion where.
Oh my God! I mean, I said something at NAMM. Think it was Mix of the Masters booth. I don't even know what it was, but there was a video, and there's now like a 28-page Gearsluts thread about it. So can you imagine if we started talking about the fact that I mix in headphones a lot and what that would generate? So I'd rather not.
No, sorry. You're in my chat. We are going to do that. So it blows my mind that one of the world's greatest mix engineers is mixing through $75 headphones.
$200.
No. They were $75.
Were they? Yeah, maybe they were when they first came out. But that's
are those the
7506s? Yeah.
Yeah, those are cheaper $100. Yeah.
Yeah, they're $200 from Amazon now, I think. But whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't. I didn't decide to do it. It just happened because it had to. And now, I use them a lot. A lot.
What do you mean it had to? What are you talking about?
Well, no, because I would be traveling, and there's no way I could bring a pair of speakers or something like that. So I just got more and more used to them. And then for a while, when we first moved to England, I had my speakers set up, but they were set up in a place that was not at my house and was fucking cold.
I remember.
So I would have to take my computer up there to hook it up to the speakers. And so I would do that, but I just did the bulk of it at home. And that just turned into more and more and more, it's just getting used to stuff. You can get used to anything. And so I just happened to hear these in a way that translates.
How did you get used to headphones? Were you comparing a lot? You get a mix going in headphones and listen on speakers and then go back and tweak in the headphones?
Yeah, I mean, there was never a process to it. It was just, I was doing a lot of work on headphones and then I would go listen on the speakers and I would hear stuff, not, you'd think it'd be low end, but it was actually more things like, wow, this mix sounds really wet. Like I need to dry it up. Just stuff that didn't bother me in headphones, that bothered me on the speakers. But I would make sure to not fix it all on the speakers. I'd go home and make sure I could actually hear the problems on the headphones. And I think without making a conscious effort to do it, that just makes your brain start listening for that stuff more and more. So now I'm at the point where I listen to the speakers for fun, but I don't change almost nothing. It's very, very seldom that I put it up on the speakers and think, oh man, I didn't hear that, because I've gotten used to them.
Wow.
Crazy.
Greg,
don't take out the reverb, man, because when I think of you, I think of that 10-second reverb on the tambourine. I know that's your vibe.
I am known for that.
Do all that high end, like no dampening happening.
Yeah,
just like
David Foster and me. That's it.
I mean, I love Walter. There's no slight against Walter whatsoever, but like that amazing, the John Tesh reverb is what I'm really talking about.
Oh yeah. I was doing David Foster, but yeah.
No one watching this knows who any of these people we're talking about are.
Well, everybody knows Walter Snuffleupagus, don't they? I had to do it because you had a mouthful of liquid.
Oh, that almost became a Martin Short moment. No one knows who Martin Short is either.
No,
bought his life story book.
He's one of the few people who's written a song about wiener juice to do with hot dogs.
What?
To do with hot dogs.
Okay.
Come on.
I'm sorry.
What is one of Martin Short's most iconic characters that he also did an animated series of? Ed Grimley.
I don't know about the animated series, but I know a lot of his
characters. Oh yeah, there was an animated series, children's cartoon of Ed Grimley, and at one point he has a song about wiener juice because it's one of his favorite foods. Is the juice from the hot dog cart, not the hot dog itself. And there's a song about it, which I'm not going to sing right now because it's your Q&A, and I got to go eat dinner. So I'm going to go have some wiener juice casserole.
Gross.
Okay. Somebody in the chat room did ask what is for dinner.
What is for dinner? Apparently, we're having some sort of like lentil bake thing, and I'm having a couple of sausages on the side because a friend of mine went to Lincolnshire yesterday and brought back sausages. So
as you do. So are you you're stopping yourself from going to the pub?
Yes, I am. And it sucks. And I'm, only on the second day of it. And this is why I might kill somebody. I'm just,
you're going to get all cranky.
Yeah. But, until this morning, there were no confirmed cases in our county. And now there are 2, and it is still going up exponentially. And the best thing, and I'm not worried about it for me because I'm not young, but I don't have any underlying health issues and things like that. But if I get it and wander around in a pub where there are 80-year-old people drinking, I will kill somebody.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm going to stay home. But I did some panic buying yesterday. I went to a brewery and bought 48 bottles of beer. So I'm good for the weekend.
Not toilet paper, but beer.
No, I've got, I'll just go outside for that. But I've got beer.
Who needs toilet paper? What's the big deal with the toilet paper?
Yeah, I don't understand it. Anyway, we're not going to start talking about that. But yes, I'm self-isolating with a lentil bake and some sausages, followed by a bunch of beer.
Nice.
Say hi to Debbie, please.
I will. Good to see you, Mark.
Good to see you.
Bye, everyone.
Awesome.
Crazy.
Andrew Sheps. That's great.
Wow.
Let's see. So we are closing in on the 2-hour mark, just about here.
Okay.
Do you want to maybe just quick fire some questions for people? Do you have another?
Well, I'm never quick, but let's try.
Okay. There actually was a question from somebody. It was in the pre-submitted ones, and I don't remember which one of the buttons it was, but relevant to what we were just talking about. Somebody was asking if you feel that you can get similar results from mixing on the box with a pair of headphones on your laptop while you're traveling, stuck at home because of the pandemic, or basically, do you feel that you can get great results in the box?
Yes, you can. I find it much harder. I'm using these headphones right now, these Audis LCD-Xs, and I hate all headphones. I hate all speakers, but I have a bunch of headphones. I seem to keep coming back to these ones. They're too dark for me on top, but they sound glorious everywhere else. And so on a whim, I checked out the SonarWorks software for headphones. They all have their own profiles done for a lot of different headphones, and they had all the Audis headphones profiled, and and I checked it out, and I loved that you could do oversampling with it. I loved that there was a mix knob. I loved that you could really get in there and tweak it and blend. You didn't have to accept their profile. You could kind of move it wherever you want, from no alteration whatsoever to halfway. And I did a mix, and I actually sent it to Andrew because I'd never done a mix for real on headphones before. And was expecting him to say, you know, this doesn't sound right because it's headphones. But he said, this is a really good mix. It sounds really good. And it was all done on headphones with the SonarWorks thing. I have no deal with SonarWorks. I paid for it. I also bought a pair of headphones, got a pair of headphones from them, and they sent them to me, and they were right heavy. And at first they didn't believe me. I'm like, guys, I know when something's right or left heavy. It's not coming up the middle. And I sent them back, and I've had no further interaction with the company whatsoever. But the software is great, and apparently you can use it for speakers as well, which I'm too scared to do. But for headphones, it's really helpful. And I've had some good luck using it, mixing on headphones. I definitely prefer being in front of my big PMC speakers. There's no mystery. I know exactly what I'm hearing. Just that alone, even if everything's in the box, I react differently to it. It's more pleasurable for me. I feel like I have a more real world perspective on what I'm hearing. I like looking through the Hubble telescope at anything, even if it's just a little blade of grass. I want to really be able to see what's going on, and then I can make it big or small, or invert the colors, or whatever I want to do. I don't want to perceive the thing I'm working on through something I can't trust. And I've had such bad luck with headphones. It's really hard for me to trust them. I've had such bad luck with most speakers. It's really hard for me to trust them. You know, there's lots of headphones that sound great. There's lots of speakers that sound great and give you a really, really pleasurable listen. There's really only a few of those things that will give you a mix that sounds accurate when you play it somewhere else. You know, Andrew Sheps has this brain where he can sort of like figure out what the analog gear is doing and how its inaccuracies and its whatever is helping, being forgiving to the music and easier for the mix to sort of appear. I find it much easier to mix on analog. It's faster for me. Things just sort of happen. But he can kind of figure out why that's happening because he has such a sharp analytical mind. I'm fuzzier in that department. And he can set up his Pro Tools session to have that stuff kind of there, ready to catch things and very quickly put you in a more analog mode. But given the choice, I'm having an analog console made right now by Paul Wolf, who used to own API, and then he owned Tonalux, and now his company's called Fix Audio Design or something like that. Yeah. Paul's a really bright guy, and he's making a 48-channel console for me that's going to flying faders, Neve automation. Why? Because of the Puremix session where I was mixing on Neve flying faders at Sunset Sound, and I loved it so much. I hadn't done it in years and years and years. But I loved being able to mix into an analog console that just had that vibe and was going through that signal path. And so I've asked Paul to make something that really feels and sounds like that console in Sunset Sound Studio One, but it's going to be so flexible on the other end that we'll actually be able to mix in Atmos and every other version of surround sound, and really, 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 really creative and flexible stuff, and 500 series, you know, all kinds of different things. I can't wait. So, I mean, clearly, I'm not just an in-the-box guy. It is a luxury. I do spend every penny I make on reinvesting into my career in a way that 99.9999999% of the population would say is foolish. I don't know how else to do it. I really don't. So
that it says something about your passion for it, though. You know, there is a takeaway there. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean it. You know, I'm a lifer. I'm fully committed to doing this, to being in it. But I hear stories about, you know, Sonny Skrillex mixing some of his amazing early dubstep singles on an airplane with headphones on, and just they sound incredible. So I can't access it that way. I don't have. I'm I'm slower, and I think I need more help, you know. And Andrew's mixes in headphones are killing. You know, Chad Blake's mixes in the box, Mick Gazowski's mixes in the box, Servin Gania's mixes in the box. Michael Brower is now in the box. Although that's not true. Michael uses a lot of outboard gear. That's kind of how I work most of the time too. It's lots and lots and lots of analog outboard gear interfacing with the digital environment. But you know, Servin's stuff sounds huge. Mick Gazowski's stuff sounds big and open and massive. Same with Andrew. You know, they figured it out. It's harder for me to figure out.
Yeah.
But it can be done. They've proven it without a shadow of a doubt. It can be done.
Sure. Yeah. Let's do.
Just drank it with the wrong coffee cup.
Was it a surprise? What was in there?
It was pretty cold.
Okay. This one's pretty good. So this is from Truth High in the live chat room, and he says, "Greg, with Bryce, you said I'm trying to hear the final song in my head." His question is, how much of your vision usually ends up like you imagined it at the end, or how much still comes as a surprise?
That's such a great question. Wow, that's a good question. That's a Mark Abrams question. I don't know what the ratio is, but I know that the results are at least I feel that the results are better if I am hearing a pretty finished thing in my head before we've done anything. In the same way, I think that a chef is not winging it. A chef is very much envisioning, like, this is the meal I want to make. I have an idea. I want it to be this. Maybe there's some experimenting. Maybe they've never made that meal before. But they're probably seeing a table, right, with like a plate and a thing and a presentation. So I kind of wait until I start hearing the record in my head, whether I'm writing it, helping to write it, or it's already written by somebody else. And I've decided I connect with the song enough that I should produce it if the other party wants me to produce it. I'm always trying to see the finish line. I'm always sort of mixing as I go for that same reason, to try to base decisions on what a final version of this thing might sound like. It used to drive me nuts when I was a studio musician in the 90s and there were no computers at the time. That didn't drive me nuts, but people would just kind of put stuff up on the recording console. They wouldn't EQ anything. There'd be quite often there was no balancing, like things were really out of perspective. I think the really great engineers would balance as they go. They were always kind of balancing and sort of mixing, but those people were few and far between. So you would wind up with this thing that was just commonly accepted as the board mix, the soundboard, the console mix, meaning it's not a mix, meaning it will be fixed in the mix.
Right.
And that just drove me nuts. I'm like, how can we make any decisions based on, you know, it's like we're downhill skiing, but you've kind of got one eye covered, or you're like, you're missing a bunch of, I don't know, you're going to make different decisions because you're not getting all the details.
Yeah. This non-committal board mix. Yeah.
Non-committal board mix, but you are committing, you're making committed decisions based on what you're hearing if you're overdubbing to it. And it's, you know, it made no sense to me at all. And just trying to, again, react, like I was trying to say earlier, like the final listener would react is huge for me. I mean, when I got hired to work on The Greatest Showman, I'd never worked on a movie before. I'd never worked to a picture before. And I was quite intimidated by the whole thing. And I thought, do I even know how to do this? This is really a lot coming at me. And then after about a week, I loved it. And I found it very intuitive working to picture. And I found that the picture actually told me what to make the music sound like. But the thing that really helped me is I kept imagining that I had bought a ticket at the movie theater. I'd paid for a ticket. Here's my ticket. I'm going to go sit in a chair and watch this movie. And, you know, I think we all, when we watch something, might have a question about, well, why did they do that? Like, I wish this had been more like that. And then I realized I was in a position where I could actually make it be more like that. I could get in and like really put my hands on the songs in that movie and make them sound a certain way, or replay a thing. The director gave me all this access. He really gave me carte blanche and said I could use everything that had already been recorded, or I could replace all of it with me playing it, or I could hire musicians, or it could be a mix up of all of those things, which it often wound up being. And I just kept trying to react to it like I imagine Rick Rubin reacts in his living room when he's listening to something, just that fan reaction. Like, I wish that I tried to watch it like I was watching something that I had nothing to do with. And that's another little brain trick I'll play too, like pretending I have nothing to do with it. Like someone's put it in front of me and said, check this out, listen to this. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, very much so. There's I'm starting to sound like a broken record on these Q&A sessions, because there's one thing that comes up with everybody that's on here, and that's it's just the word intention, and like approaching something with intention. And that what you're saying about the board mix really kind of draws me back to that, to mention it yet again. But that's something that like Vance Powell, for example, everything when it's going down to tape, his Pro Tools faders are all at 0, and he's working on the console, but he's crafting the thing. And if you were to just load up that Pro Tools session blank and you hit play with all the faders zeroed out, you hear the mix, you hear the record, and it very much tells you what it's supposed to be. There's no guessing about any of that stuff. It's like this thing is going down this road. And he's talked in the past about, if you don't like that road, then you go back and you do it again on a different road. But that recording is that direction. That's
another way of getting to the same place. Al Schmidt does the same thing. We get a session from him in Pro Tools. Everything's at Unity. Everything's at 0, and it sounds like an Al Schmidt mix. And I'm not as organized as those guys, so I have my own like kind of goofier way of sort of building that and putting it all together. But yeah, the same result. You hit the play.
Idea, yeah.
It sounds like a version of what I kind of hope it's going to feel like at the finish line.
Yeah, that's something fun for the mixing contest too. I mean, you load up those tracks and you get where you were pushing the train or where it was going. It wasn't this confusing thing of like, oh, the kick tune is 10 dB above the mix, and let me bring that back down and figure out what people were thinking when this was happening and all that.
Right, sure, yeah.
So it's just something that very much so happened in the series, where you could see that you had that vision as you were going down it, which is really interesting. I think that's kind of what the question was getting at, is like, did you knew from the start, or did it mold and change as you went? So.
Yeah, I think I definitely had, I definitely had some sort of vision of what I wanted the final thing to sound like. And then the thing that makes that easier is liking the song. That's the huge key thing. If I didn't like the song, I wouldn't have that vision, and I wouldn't know, again, food metaphors, but it's like getting asked to make a dish that you yourself don't like the taste of. So how are you going to know how to make that great?
Yeah.
I could follow instructions from somebody else who does make it great in a way that the person requesting it from me likes it. But then what am I doing? It's just like, repeating, just trying to replicate something somebody else did. So liking the material, the better the song is, I find, the more it kind of records itself.
Yeah.
The really great songs don't require a ton of head scratching and, oh, what do we do here? Like it's already baked into it. It sort of knows what it is.
Right.
So that helps me a lot. And I've learned the hard way to not go near music that I don't really like. I have to feel like I really get it, and I really kind of get it up in my body, and it's affecting me, above the neck and below the neck too. It makes me want to kind of move and dance, and even I'm a terrible dancer, but also like I like what's going on from a neck up perspective as well.
Yeah.
And then when I have that, then it's so much easier to kind of know where to shape. It's just like a person. You meet somebody, it's like, oh, I like you. The conversations gonna go a lot better than when you get the vibe, I don't really like you, you know.
Right. Yeah. Right. There's okay. So I don't remember what number question it was, but there was a question that was submitted that actually asked about that, about how you select projects that you want to work on, and do you select? Do you turn things down? What's your process there?
I turned down almost everything.
Mm.
I used to say yes to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. I mean, within reason, everything.
Sure.
And was aware of some friends of mine, namely Spike Stent and songwriter from London, Kathy Dennis, who said no to a lot of things. And I was always fascinated by it. Like, how do you do that? How do you say someone's offering you work in the music business? Really? You're going to say no? And they said no all day long. And once I got to know both those people better, I realized that it was a really productive word for them and for the people around them too. They were waiting to find something that they resonated with, like where they like the taste of the food, you know. They don't want to make food that they don't know how to make. They don't like the taste of it. They want to feel connected to it musically, or that they're able to help it, or, you know, join that team. And it's very hard to say no as a creative person, because it's really hard to get paid to do anything artistic. It, you know, it's almost impossible, really. So how do you say no when someone's offering to have you mix a song or produce a song or whatever it is? But when you start saying no in a respectful way, in a productive way, when you do say yes to something, everyone that's paying attention will know that you really mean it, and you're doing it because you really believe in it. And it creates a trust in you as a whatever you are, that you're not afraid to say no. And what became, you know, what started out as a really terrifying thing for me to start doing is now something I think within the industry is kind of known for. Like I pass on things all the time, and I'll just say, look, I'm not the right person for it. It's not that I think I'm better than it. Right. It doesn't speak to me. I'm the wrong choice. And that's true. It's not personal. I don't get it in a way. And some, you know, I'm also attracted to things that I don't get in a mysterious, cool, interesting way. If that's happening, then I feel like I might be the right person for it. But there's nothing wrong with saying no to stuff. So say it again.
Sorry to interrupt you. Do you have an example of that where it was something that was like, you just didn't understand it, but you were like, for some reason, I'm going to do this anyway?
I have lots of examples of things I didn't understand that I said no to, that I don't regret saying no to.
Yeah.
I mean, really kind of anything that I work on has an element of what you're talking about. Like, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. It's really boring. It's like really fun for 10 minutes the first time. And then after that, it's really stunting, and it's just nothing nice about it. It's really frustrating. So I like to work with people that do something that I'm not good at. I like to work with people that know something I don't know. And that's part of my journey in all of this, my process, that I like to learn. I like to decode things that are mysterious to me. So pretty much anything I take on has got that in it. You know, like right now I happen to be working on a lot of musicals. Do I like musicals? No. Have I ever listened to musicals? No, it's not my thing. But I'm very much in that world right now, and the musicals that I am working on, I love them. Like, I love them. And it's definitely coming from a place of, I don't do this. I mean, you know, I feel very lucky to be working on this movie that's going to come out in May. It's called In the Heights, and it's the new Lin-Manuel Miranda film. It's a musical that he wrote and starred in on Broadway before Hamilton. He also did Hamilton. And it's this fantastic movie. I'm obsessed with it. It makes me cry all the time. The music is so good. Alex Lacamoire, who is Lynn's right hand musically, and they've worked together for years and years and years. And Alex is a real sensei, badass composer, piano player, arranger, producer. We met on The Greatest Showman and worked together off and on, mostly on, for like half a year. And he called me out of the blue and he said, Greg, I really want you to come in on this and help us get to their finish line musically. And a lot of the music is like straight up salsa, like not in my background in a big way, growing up in rural Canada. I mean, you're lucky if you can even find salsa in a grocery store there. It's true. And if you could, probably no one's buying it because they say, oh, it's spicy. We don't want spicy food. Sorry, Peterborough. Maybe it's changed. That's actually not true. There's a restaurant in downtown Peterborough that prides itself on its hot sauces called Hot Belly Mamas. But trust me, growing up, there was no hot sauce in the restaurant, or certainly not in my parents' cupboard. But it's such a thrill to work on this music, and a lot of it, the really traditional, for lack of a better description, the really traditional Latin American music that's in this film. There's 18 songs that I'm mixing, some of which I'm doing a bit of extra production on. They went to Columbia, not Washington, D.C., District of Columbia. They went to the country Columbia and recorded like really serious, incredible musicians. And I'm getting to get my hands on that and like mix that and bring out the timbali fills and the amazing trumpet solos and this visual story. The director is John Chu, who's a really talented director who did Crazy Rich Asians. And the combination of him telling Lynn's story in this movie is just really amazing. It's I can't wait for people to there's never been a movie like this, actually. The music's really fresh. It's a lot of rapping. It's really like, it's so great. So much fun. I've never worked on anything like this. So that's one of the projects I'm working on right now. Where I when Alex called me, I remember telling him, like, I'm so thankful to you for even thinking of me for this. In my feeble brain, I thought that maybe he would ask someone who really like just does that music all the time. And I said something like that to him. He's like, Greg, it's not about that. So he said, I feel like you're going to know where to put this. And of course, I'm going to get my input, he said, and there'll be input from Lynn and from the director. But, so I'm pretty deep into it now. I think I'm like 10 songs into the 18 songs. And I'm not trying to jinx it, but there hasn't been that much pushback to what I've done. Like they're and it's me opening myself up to the movie, which I love. Like I really love it. I love the story. I'm going to start crying talking about the story. The story is so beautiful. So that's the kind of stuff I look for, Now, right. Having said that, I had no idea that Alex was going to call me to work on this project. Like not a clue. Did not see that coming at all. As soon as he did, though, and within 30 seconds of describing what the project was, there was nothing to think about for me. It was like, I'm in. I'm totally in. And I had the same reaction to Greatest Showman when the director, Michael Gracie, came to my studio and did this 2.5-hour meeting where he got up and he would act out scenes from the movie, which wasn't finished at that point. And he would show me footage from workshops on his laptop. And there was nothing to think about. I was like, of course I must do this. There's a band from Columbus, Ohio, where you are right now, that as soon as I heard the first note from them, there was nothing to think about other than like I wanted to help them in the songwriting department. I thought that the only thing missing from this equation was I want to make sure that the songs are as great as they play and as they perform and as they look. They were called Black Coffee for a long time, and they've changed their name to South of Eden. I also love that name. Black Coffee was used. There's a DJ in Europe named Black Coffee who's actually pretty well known. They had to change their name, but that, like that band, we made a rock record live off the floor, no click track, straight to tape at Sunset Sound Studio One this past summer, and that was a no-brainer for me. It's like, yes, of course, if you guys want me, I'm in. That's the feeling I'm looking for, taking on new projects. And when you have that feeling, like I probably already said a bunch in this answer and maybe even before, then it is easier to envision where you would like it to be. And I think that both of those ingredients are super important when you're trying to, you know, make finished music that's going to come out of speakers, that you're trying to catch the attention of people who are dealing with 40 to 60,000 new songs showing up online every day. You got to really, you got to come from your heart and, and just jump at it and give it everything. And that's the stuff that seems to work. I can't figure out another way to make any of this work.
Yeah. One question that comes up a lot is how do you stay inspired with as much work as you do and all the different songs and everything that you hear? How do you stay inspired? And you know, not to answer that for you, but it sounds like that's a big part of it, is knowing when to say yes and when something is not going to be a good fit or could be draining. Or
well, you never really know what something is until you're deep in it.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't tell. I had worked with Alex Lacamoire before, so I at least knew what our dynamic is. But yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of this stuff, it's with people I've never worked with before. A couple of times there's been situations where I really loved the artist's prior work and I loved their new songs and they wanted me to produce their record and I was very excited to do it. And then as soon as we started, it was like being in the room with angry Satan, and in a way that I just couldn't handle. You know, I don't mind hard work. I don't mind people being upset at how hard it is to make a record, because it is so much harder than people know, unless they try and do it themselves. But when it turns kind of like malevolent and like mean, and I don't know if those people knew they were being malevolent and mean, but I can't solve it for them because they were really like, it was awful. So I can't hang out with that stuff. Life's too short. We're all going to be dead way too quick. I don't care how great the music is. If you're, you know, if I'm losing sleep at night because you are such an asshole, then I just can't, it's not worth it. It's, you know, music is just, music's very important to me, but at the end of the day, it is music, and my well-being and my ability to be a husband and a father is more important to me. But, you know, of course, like the best case scenario is having that feeling and then having an experience in the studio that goes from manageable leading to a great creative result to really great leading to a great creative result. I don't think you have to be mean to anybody ever to wind up with a really great result. And to, not to reference it again, but this In the Heights movie, like everybody is so nice. They're so nice. They're so cool. They're so talented. They're so together. And they're such a pleasure to deal with. And, you know, I don't want it to be, I get scared when things feel too fun and they feel like a party and like I think people get sucked into experiencing some sort of delayed adolescence sometimes in the studio, you know, like, oh, this is cool. And what could be, there's no cooler place to hang out than a recording studio, working on music and having fun and, you know, starting to drink some beers or whatever, do some drugs. But that's not why I got into music. I want to like get a result. I want to share it with people. I want it to be an external thing. There's something very exciting for me about some little, you know, thing that we're working on, then having a shot at being experienced by a lot of other people and having it mean their own unique thing to them individually. You know, it's not what it means to me, but I love that. It's like, it's a little bit like fireworks, you know, the firework looks different from every angle. It's going to be a different experience for everybody.
Right.
I'm really starting to go down many tangents right now, but
that's a good analogy though. That's
you know, you have to be very focused, I think, to make a firework and really kind of like in your little shed.
Yeah.
But then it's all about sharing it with like a lot of people. And sometimes they blow up on the ground and they never even get off, you know, they backfire. And then when it goes great, it's amazing. And it looks different and it sounds different for everybody. If you're really close to the firework, you hear the sound right away. If you're a quarter mile away, you get that weird sound delay thing. Sorry, I don't know why I'm getting on the firework.
That's really good though. I haven't heard that one before. That's a really, really good analogy. Yeah. I mean, you could have the dud that explodes at your feet and potentially hurts you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's also how
Interesting.
you learn how to not do that again too.
Right. Yeah. Well, I love that actually. That's really good. Okay, so we have taken a substantial amount of your time, and I'm extremely grateful for that. Do you um, do you want to take one more, or I have a wrap up question if not, or
I gotta get to work.
gotta get to
Give me
work. Yeah,
let's do
yeah.
your wrap up question.
Okay, so uh, time warp back to young Greg Wells, who is either learning music in Canada or had just moved to Los Angeles, and knowing everything that you know now, what would you, if you were sitting down with yourself and just trying to give some advice to either like a frustrated Greg or something, what's a couple things that you've kind of learned throughout your career that might have helped?
Um, well,
You've only
time
got
is a
five
really
minutes with
amazing
you,
thing.
so
Sorry, it's hard. I want to try to come up with something that counts here. So, I mean, time is really an interesting thing that because I am hilariously elderly at this point. I've had a lot of time in my life, and when you're younger, your division of your time, like if you're 10 years old, you've got 10 pie slices. And so a pie slice is a big chunk of the pie. When you're 3 years old, you've only got 3 pie slices in 1 year. Remember when you were a little boy, like a year, it felt like you were never going to get from second grade to third grade. It felt impossible. Like, how are we ever going to get to next September? It takes so long.
yeah,
Now, like September is just blow by for me. It's
right,
like it's a month, like really, that was a year ago. Really, that was 5 years ago. Really. But time does this thing that you can't see coming until it happens. All of this stuff to me in my career makes such sense with the clarity of hindsight, looking back on it. The path that I've sort of macheted my way through from Peterborough to Los Angeles makes great sense looking back on it. It makes no sense when you're the one doing it and you're looking forward and there is no path in front of you. And if you have a machete, you're lucky. In my case, I had a spoon for most of it. I'm just trying to what do I do? I don't know what I'm doing. I think it's important to have a goal. And I also think there's a danger to having a goal too. So like it's good, but you got to watch out, because and I've experienced some stuff like this too, when you have a really defined goal, and I've had a few different ones throughout my life, by the time you actually are ready to hit that point, to hit that mark, where you are, on the path where there's the goal in front of you. By the time you get there, you might be a few things. You might be overqualified for that goal that made a lot more sense to you 5 years before, or even half a year before. And also on that path to that goal, you will be experiencing things like a view. If you look left to right or up and down or wherever, or even behind you, you'll see things that you've never seen before. You may discover things that just weren't on the menu before because you couldn't see them. You weren't exposed to them. And to sort of like keep the horse blinders on and just pretend that's not happening when you're heading toward your goal, I think is really a missed opportunity. And so, I'm saying have a goal, but also don't have a goal, which to me, in my messed up brain, that actually does make a lot of sense. I would say have a goal, but also just be open to like what, if you want to equate that journey to going up a mountain or a hill, the higher you get on that thing, the more you can see. Like you got a way better view of where you came from, what the other places you can go. And it's a bit like knowledge. The more you learn that there's more to learn. The more you realize that you know less and less. The more you know, the less and less. Like Socrates said, the wise man knows nothing.
Right.
So just being open to that. Like growing up, was obsessed with like fame looked really attractive to me. Being a rock star looked really cool to me. It looked like an escape from me growing up with, like, I didn't grow up in poverty. My dad actually really grew up in poverty. We didn't, but he made like $15,000 a year. We had enough.
Mm-hmm.
We had food. It was cheap living in rural Ontario. But my bikes were used. My clothes were made by my mom. My hockey skates were used hockey skates. So we had to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Fame felt like some sort of narcissistic escape from that stuff, and like some kind of, I had somehow equated that with also being musical expression, which they're not. They're completely different. So that's something I had to learn at some point, that fame actually kind of sucks. It's awful. It's no fun. There's really no upside to it other than getting a good table at a busy restaurant, and that's sort of it. It's quite imprisoning, and it's really stunting. And so that was a nice realization. And then I thought, well, I want to make my own music. I want to be a recording artist, and actually got a little record deal on IRS Records just before they went bankrupt. My record never came out, but I realized that I was too collaborative. I really wanted to work with other people, and I always kind of knew that, but I couldn't quite quantify it. I couldn't frame it and realize it. I was still attached to, I worked with other people to make money and stay alive as a musician, but I secretly always wanted to be the artist. And then when I tried it, I realized I actually don't like it the way that I thought I would. I don't like having all my eggs in this basket. I don't think I'm wired hot enough to only want that, to just constantly be standing on stage for the applause of strangers. And I really enjoy creating in the studio, and I really enjoy collaborating with other people and doing that thing. So that took a while to kind of reframe my initial vault toward music, which came from a more ego-based place. And I remember sitting down with Glenn Ballard, who's a very, very, very successful producer and songwriter, also from a really small town in Mississippi. Glenn is really a wonderful human being, and he's very generous with his advice. He's a very smart, thoughtful guy. And I met him right when my little record deal thing fell apart, and my record never came out, and he had heard it. That little record got heard a little bit in the industry, and it led to my very first productions with other artists, because they thought, well, if you can do that, then maybe you can help this person make a record. And I remember sitting with Glenn, and I was expressing frustration about that. And I was kind of saying, well, Glenn, maybe you'd be interested in me as an artist. And he very sweetly, I don't think he was interested in me as a producer. And he said, look, there's really no reason why you can't view your work as a songwriter and a record producer as a big part of your artistry. It's not like that's not lacking in artistic contribution. It just means you're not like the face of the thing that, and that's okay. And he said, and by the way, that's been my entire career. And that helped me a lot. That was another reframing of, and I'm still sort of just on that path too, working with other people, and not being afraid of stuff, believing in yourself. I think that here's the best answer to your question, which you asked 45 minutes ago. Sorry. I think that any of us, the fact, Mark, that you're sitting here as part of this talk, it makes me emotional, because it's hard for everybody. It's like that you've done this, and that anybody watching this talk right now has done a thing where they have bet on themselves to think that either they are making music professionally, or they could make music professionally, or that they allow themselves to believe that there's even a possibility that there's a shot of them doing it. Or Andrew Sheps was watching this earlier, who's, won Grammys and worked for the world's biggest artists and biggest record producers, and was Rick Rubin's guy for like a decade. Like we've all bet on ourselves. And so my advice to a younger me, who was betting on himself a lot already, because I had nothing else. I had really nothing to lose. I didn't want I didn't want to stay in my hometown. I wanted to like go to where music was being made, and that was definitely far away at the time. There's a fantastic phrase. I don't know who came up with it, but it says, "Fortune favors the brave." Fortune favors the brave. There's something about taking a leap, betting on yourself, taking a chance. I would always say, make it an educated risk, make it an educated chance, but chance is very important. No one really knows what's going to happen. You know, like we could have a gargantuan earthquake right now in the middle of this, talk. I live in Southern California. Like at any point, my house could fall over. Yeah. It's true. I've got 6 kids. It's just, car travel is the most dangerous thing any of us do. We should all stop driving cars, which of course is impossible right now. If you look at the odds, like if you really run the numbers and you see a couple photos of car accidents, like no one's going to drive a car anymore, but we all do. It's right. Part of, it's, you have to be very risk adverse to do this. But I would just say betting on yourself is a lonely thing. It's a thing that most people don't have a lot of cheerleaders around. They're going, yeah, bet on yourself, based on nothing. I've said a few times, it's a bit like a kid going to their parents saying, I think I want to go train to be a Jedi and learn how to trust the Force, and saying it earnestly and sincerely. And most parents' reaction will be like, oh, that's not a good idea. Why don't you, let's move you over here and get a degree in whatever, saying you want to do music for a living, I think is pretty much the same thing to most parents when they hear that. So, but betting on yourself really does a thing, not taking no for an answer. If you feel a thing in you without a plan B, that is the key part of this. If you feel that a path and you really don't have a plan B, then you need to do it. You need to do it. The older you get, the faster the years go by. They really, the pie slices are more, so they're thinner. Right. Same pie. And, you got nothing to lose. However, if you do feel a plan B, even like an itch of a plan B, pay attention to it, because that can be a really nice way. If you make that your plan A, that becomes the way that you pay for your life. And maybe it's a job that you're not completely in love with, but it keeps your lights on, it keeps your bills paid, it keeps food on the table. Then you can pursue your music in a way that there's no pressure. You can do exactly what you want to do. You can still work hard at it. There's still plenty of time in the day if you organize your day that way to work on music a lot and get a lot of stuff done. And you don't have to feel that pressure of, oh my goodness, like this is the only way I can pay for things is by my mixes or my songs that I'm writing or my instrument that I'm playing or I think the people that do that, they just might know something that I don't know, but I don't know it. So all I know how to do is plan A. It's just the plan. I got one plan. Yeah. And if you feel that, you have to listen to it, and you got to metaphorically jump off the cliff and build the wingsuit on the way down, as I like to say.
Nice. Thank you. Very inspirational. Yeah. There's so many just things to unpack in most of the sentences that you're saying here, that it's like there's just so many ways to take the conversation. But most importantly, I just want to thank you for giving us so much of your time on this thing, and for allowing us into what is kind of an intimidating situation with the Start to Finish series. I mean, you allowed us to put a camera on you while you were in a very vulnerable writing spot with an artist and still trying to make a great product, not knowing what was going to happen at the end of it. And that's a very brave thing, I think, and was thinking the entire time of just there's a pressure to that, no matter how much you've done this, that this thing is being documented. And it's not like you rehearsed the song. You were going to figure it out as you went. And you were playing everything at the same time, allowing yourself to mess up on camera and make it part of the learning experience. And just on behalf of the whole Puremix team, I want to say thank you so much for letting us into that. And that was...
well, I got to jump on something you just said, because it's really important. And I wish I'd brought it up earlier. And maybe I said it at some point in the series, I can't remember. You have to be okay with making a fool of yourself.
Mm.
You have to be okay with sticking your neck out and trying a thing, and like being the only person in the room that thinks this is something worth pursuing. Like there were some guitar parts that I played I remember reading the comments on the Puremix website. People were like, why is Greg playing these country guitar parts on the songs? Like, it's the worst shit I've ever heard. Please tell me that's not going to be in the final version, And then I did something where like I had a sample of harps playing these huge glissando arpeggios. And I knew it was probably not going to see the light of day, but I thought maybe like if you dig around the garden, you keep trying to, maybe there's one thing that's going to stick and be a happy little accident. And to my knowledge, I didn't use any of it. And people were like, why the harp? Like if that harp makes the final thing, I'm going to, come find Greg and hurt him. But you have to be willing to make an ass out of yourself again and again and again and again, and be confident with knowing that that's part of the discovery process. This is not like a neat and tidy thing. It's messy, and it can be really embarrassing. You're discovering stuff. You're inventing things. You're discovering things as you go. You're creating things. To quote Ron Howard, the movie director, one more time, he says, we as creative people, we have to remember that most things we come up with wind up as failure. They don't work. Most things we come up with, and this is one of the biggest movie directors in this town that I live in, most things fail. Most things that not just kind of don't work, they fail. They don't work. Most things fail. Most things fail. Most things fail.
Right.
Most things fail. So that's really freeing, to think that it's okay to keep trying a thing, and there's all kinds of sports references for that too. Michael Jordan, Babe Ruth, like there's Babe Ruth's strikeout rate, I think, was 3 times greater than his home run rate. I think the ratio is the same for Michael Jordan. I think for every 3 baskets that he shot, 1 went in. And he would quite happily talk about that. He does quite happily talk about that. Kobe Bryant used to talk about the same thing. It's just like trying. And it does not feel good to be Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan, or at the time Babe Ruth, where you're a rock star in your sport to the point where you've transcended your sport. The world is watching you play, and you mess up. But you mess up because you're trying to like do a really amazing thing. And then when you do the amazing thing, it's still because you were trying in the exact same way when the ball bounced off the rim, or you just missed the swing. So we have to be cool with that. We have to be cool with being spastic and things not working out. So that's why I think if this was like my very first production, I would have been really awfully uncomfortable being filmed like that. But
sure.
I've done this a lot. So I'm okay with, I have some sort of faith. Faith is a funny thing, right? But belief and faith, it's the same thing. Your belief is everything, right? If you get into an argument with somebody who believes something really fundamentally different than you do, you're never going to convince the other person of anything because they just believe it.
Yeah.
You can throw all the facts and figures you want, or they can do it to you, but it's not going to change the anchor of the thing you are tethered to, which creates your belief, So
right.
I had faith that we would arrive at some sort of place that was going to be worthy of being filmed. Zero guarantee. I suppose the only guarantee, if it was a total disaster, I would have begged you guys to not release it.
Sure.
But it's okay to screw up. It's okay to screw up. In fact, if you're not making mistakes, then you're doing something really wrong.
Right. It's a great lesson. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That's awesome. There's so many things that are like, I'm probably going to have to go back and watch this and just like move the window half out the screen so I don't have to look at myself, and listen back to this to like process it all again. Yeah. Just thank you for so many moments and so many lessons in there. And I also,
I love talking about this stuff with you. Is this going to be watchable after it's live now? Or is it just live?
Yeah, it'll live. On the Q&A page, you'll be able to find the YouTube link for it too, and I'll send it to you. Yeah, I want to point out one more thing, just as we kind of wrap up and get out of here, and also thank you for it. Just throughout this entire podcast, you talked about other people way more than you talked about yourself, and I want to thank you for that humility in there. And the lesson in that is just that you're this open sponge. This is something that I'm trying to learn from you is you're extracting information from all of these amazing people that are in your circle, but you're never seemingly so I don't know, closed off to not ask somebody, how did you do that thing or whatever. And while that seems to somebody who thinks that way like an obvious thing, I think a lot of people either like there's something about the ego that closes them off to suscepting themselves to saying like, I don't know how to do what you're doing, can you please teach me that? And there's something about that I think is a huge takeaway from listening to you speak and so many of the things that you've done online and all that stuff. And thank you for that humility and all that.
I mean, look, if it worked, if it made the music better, if it worked, being egomaniacal and being shut down, being closed off to other people's process, then I would do that.
Right.
It doesn't work. It leaves you closed off and shut down and not open to other people's process. It hurts the music. It's not, I am not the music.
Mm-hmm.
It's not me. Like I'm a very, up and running musician. I can play stuff. I can rely on my craft. I can create a thing that will totally work and be functional. Might even have a little like wind in the sails and do a thing. But for that really zingy, like special, oh my God factor, that always comes from some place that I don't know what it is or where it comes from. Quincy Jones and Stevie Wonder have a phrase, you have to leave enough space in the studio for God to walk into the room. And whether you believe in God or not, we all know exactly what that means. It's bigger than you. It's even if it's smaller than you, it's not you. It's something else. The Greeks used to talk about the muses. There were 9 muses, and 3 of them I think were for music, and there was a muse for poetry and a muse for whatever. They externalized it, and I think that there's something really beautiful about externalizing it, whether you want to call it God or whatever. That all works for me. And I mean, that's actually why music is called music, because it's like the muses. It's muse-ish. Right. But it's not me, it's not me. If it is me, it's getting in the way of something that I'm really interested in. And I'm just very curious, I'm like really curious about how to do a better job. And I'm curious to know how my heroes got to their own results and what their process was. And it's all self-serving ultimately, it's all about like, I suppose I'm talking about other people because I'm more interested in it than me, but it is based on me trying to become a better whatever I'm doing, I don't mind. I won't mention any names and I won't even mention the project, but something I was recently on involved, can I say this? Involved a movie director who would say on almost a daily basis how bad everyone not in the room that he was in was at doing their job. And it's a movie director who's not from California. And this person would say that how everybody in LA has no idea what they're doing, and that they were so shocked when they spent time in LA, they just realized they're all hacks. Which is a very big thing to say, that a town where movies are largely made out of and tons of directors and writers and actors live, that they're all hacks. But this was a message that was, and very shut down. This person's very shut down, didn't really trust anybody. And then this particular film that they were working on, when it came out, died a death like nothing has ever died a death. It was just like, that person might not work again in the same way that they were working before. And there's such a massive danger to doing that. It's so stupid to just say, you know, I don't care about my audience. I don't care about my competition. You know,
yeah.
There's so much to be learned. Like, again, this Socratic thing of like the wise man knows nothing. The more I uncover this stuff, the more I realize like I really don't know what I'm doing, you know, and I'm good with that, because that puts me in this very open place of just constantly trying, you know. And I think maybe it's easier to hear maybe now from someone who is 51 and has, you know, my bio looks very different than it did when I was 25. So I can speak from this place of experience, and you know, maybe that would turn people off if I was starting my career and saying that stuff. But I think to anyone that's kind of smart and kind of aware of like how this stuff actually works, it's a good message no matter where you're at in your career. I think it can really help you. It's why I advocate doing the playlist thing, the mixed playlist thing. I tell everybody, like, when you're mixing a song, make a playlist of your favorite 20 mixes done by other people from your favorite records. Stop every 2 hours. Stop what you're doing. Force yourself to stop. There's plugins now that can do it, where you load in your reference mixes and you can volume match, and it's really easy to do. Or you can switch to Tidal or Apple Music, iTunes, whatever. Listen to something and force yourself to listen to other people's work while you're in the middle of doing your own thing. I still do it. I do it all the time still. And it can be embarrassing, and it's weird, and it can be very humbling, and it sort of destroys the whole ego connection to your music. But that stuff doesn't help the music. I'm really an advocate of cutting all those ego ties. Again, if it made it better, I would be advocating that everybody get completely up their own butt and be total egomaniacs and not listen to me or anybody else. And like, you are right, you know everything you need to know. It's like, it doesn't work.
I think it's more ingrained in your personality, but yeah, sure. I get your point. Yeah. So yeah, wow, cool. Very, very helpful stuff. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, I love talking with you about this stuff. It's a really natural fit, and it's fun to be able to share it with folks.
Awesome. Yeah. Again, thank you so much. Yeah, I guess to wrap up, thank you everybody who participated in the mixing contest. Thanks for watching the series. Thank you for doing the series, Greg. And
yeah, likewise.
For everybody who's watching, we do have something very, very fun that's coming with Greg and the guy who crashed our party earlier. So that'll be out no later than very soon, as Fab would say.
How soon?
Pretty soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. So stay tuned for that. It's gonna be a whole new light on those guys. So cool. Yeah, I hope to see you soon, and we'll see everybody next time. So cool.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks everybody.
Cheers.